Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we're going to be talking about the astrology of October 2024. Hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon here. I'm recording this under the auspices of a beautiful Taurus moon, so hopefully you're just having a relaxing Friday or whenever you're listening to this out in the digital sphere. We're going to go on a journey today. We're going to dive into all the details. We're going to check out the eclipse. We're going to check out full moons, quarter moons. We're going to talk about ingresses of planets into new signs. We'll talk about solar phases today, the relationship of a planet to the sun, forward and retrograde motion. We're going to have a planet that's going to emerge from the beams this month. We've got out of bounds planets to discuss, including Venus. So we'll talk about the out of boundsness of Venus this month. But yeah, we're going to take it decan by decan. We're going to look at Libra II, Libra III, and Scorpio I today. I'll show you a couple slides from my webinars. But if you're joining me, throw me a little comment in the chat. Let me know that you're here today. I always love seeing that you're here with me and where you're stopping in from. These live streams are very collaborative. This is a community where we like to highlight the wonderful members of our group here. And it's always an honor that you're spending this time with me. So I want to make sure I give you a shout out. Rachel Fletcher is here. What's up, Rachel Fletcher? Nice to see you. Joining us from Roanoke, Virginia. I love the deer and the leaves here. Yeah, it's almost fall, isn't it? We're going to be talking about our autumnal equinox, the transition from the light part of the year into the dark part of the year. Sort of I don't know. This is the time where we start to maybe go internal a little bit. We spend more time inside. We're kind of reaping what we've sowed in the light part of the year. So lots to get to with that for sure. So thank you, Rachel, for being here today. And super excited that you might be joining us for some of our offerings here too. I'm really excited about these things going on. I did want to mention, friends, I do have some pretty amazing offerings here that I want to get you hip to before we dive into everything. I have a number of fall class offerings that I am super excited to share with you. I have my fall 2024 class offering schedule ready to go. There's 3 different offerings. You can do 1, you can do 2, you could do all of them. You could get them bundled and get a special deal. And I will talk about that now if you'll spare me a few minutes of your time. The first thing we have here is our Decan walk. Okay, this is our Decan walk. Let's see. Where did that go? There you go. That's what I wanted right there. So this is Decan walk 24-25. We just recently wrapped up Decan walk 23-24. It was an incredible experience. I had a group of people that joined me twice a month for about 2 hours a session on Monday afternoons, and we looked at each other's charts and witnessed each other's journey through the lens of the decans for an entire year. That's the first time I've done something like that. It was an incredible experience getting to witness people's journey, getting to get a glimpse into their lives, and to be able to connect it with their charts. We learned so much about each other. We became good friends. We supported each other through really some challenging times while contextualizing all of this through the lens of astrology. And that was super valuable as a learning experience as a professional astrologer as well, because we are able to see how the symbols and the archetypes played out in multiple different ways. Archetypes are multifaceted, and being able to see how they connect with people's lived experience is extremely valuable. And we don't always get to see that over the long term as astrologers. So it was an awesome learning experience. It was a supportive environment. Hopefully we created a safe space to be able to share, some of the most vulnerable parts of our life. But I encourage you, if you're interested in having a witness to your journey and witnessing others' journeys, being able to learn the language of astrology through actually connecting it with people's lives, this is an incredible opportunity to do so. We're going to be meeting up on Monday afternoons. Classes are recorded if you can't meet up every time. And yeah, check that out on my website, spencermichaud.com. I think it's going to be a really great experience. We've got a couple people that are hopping on board for a second year in a row, and they'll be super fascinating to see people's journey through a different Time Lord with a different birthday, etc. So, so much to learn, and I'm so excited for this group that we have coming up. So check out the Decan Walk 24-25. I also have a new webinar series that I'm doing with my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews of the Third Coast Mojo Etsy store. We are going to be teaming up to do a series called Dignity and Devotion, the 7 traditional planets. And we're going to meet up every second Saturday of the month for the next 7 months. We're going to talk about each traditional planet in ascending Chaldean order, the first of which you can see here on the screen is the moon. So we're going to be meeting up on October 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be talking about how the planet moves through all of the different dignities, exaltation, fall, in its own domicile, in its detriment, in its face, in its triplicity, etc. And really just learn about the significations of the planet, do a deep dive, and also learn how to remediate challenging placements with those planets and how to have a devotional and ritual practice. Tanya is amazing at creating beautiful materia that can help people mitigate really challenging placements. She has a wonderful shop called Third Coast Mojo on Etsy where she sells her ritually elected oils, soaps, salts, herb blends, etc. And she just brings a lot of wisdom to the table. So if you are interested in really getting a deep dive into the planets, which is one of the fundamental elements of astrology, but also learning how to maybe begin to have a ritual or devotional practice or learn a little bit about astrological magic, this is a great opportunity to do so. So check that out. That's going to start on October the 12th. And then finally, I have a book club that's starting, a guided group study. We're going to be going down a journey with J.R.R. Tolkien. We're going to start with The Hobbit. I've been really getting into the Lord of the Rings series and just diving into the world of Middle-earth. And this is going to be an exciting opportunity for us to go on this journey together, read the books as a group, share our experience, and also to talk about the myths and influences that Tolkien was drawing upon to write this amazing fantasy world, basically, to create this archetypal world. And I think this is a unique opportunity, not only to do something extremely fun, but I think to be able to share that experience with others. I know there's a lot of Tolkien fans out there in my community, and to be able to share that love and joy with each other, I think is a unique opportunity. If you haven't read these, it's a great opportunity to get into that world. And I think it's also very valuable for astrologers that are looking for different themes to discuss with clients or to view your own chart through. We don't always necessarily just have to draw only upon the Greek myths as influences, as archetypes. Being able to connect with Celtic mythology, connect with the Norse mythology, and even just connecting with the stories of Middle-earth to help learn how to be better human beings, I think is extremely valuable. So check that out too. That's going to be every other Monday for 8 sessions. Really excited about it. We've got some really cool people from around the globe. We have some really amazing people that I think are going to have unique perspectives on all of this. So I would love for you to join me on that. If you are just like, you're like, you know what, Spence, those sound amazing. All of them. I want to do it all. There's a fall 2024 class bundle with a bonus Mythos natal reading. So for those of you who want to support my work in this way, I'm offering a bonus free 2-hour reading, my flagship natal chart reading, 2 hours long. I go into very thorough depth, like unpacking your natal chart with the decans, with tarot, doing I-Ching as well, but really breaking it down and trying to contextualize it with your life. And I'm offering that as a free bonus if you sign up for all 3 classes. There are payment plans available. If you're like, I would really love to do this, but I can't afford all of it right now, just reach out to me, spencermichaudastrology@gmail.com. I'll be happy to work with you to set something up. Even if you need a sliding scale or something, if you're like, I don't even know if I can afford that, I'd be happy to work with you. I just want you to be able to participate. I love this community and I love creating opportunities to learn and to connect and whatnot, and I don't want anybody to be left out. So don't be afraid to reach out if you need some help. But I would love for you to join me. So check that out. There is a link in the beginning of this chat that is pinned to the chat on YouTube to be able to kind of check out all of the different offerings that I have there. I'm really excited about it. I've been working hard on it. Tanya's been working hard on it. There's a bonus supermoon box set here if you sign up for the the Dignity and Devotion Planet webinars. There's a 50% off coupon off this amazing supermoon box set that has all exalted Taurus moon like we're experiencing today. You can see that there's a number of oils in that package, some ritual herbs, a beautiful soap and candle set. It's awesome. I use her stuff every day, and yeah, check it out. Okay, so that's what I've got for you as far as our class offerings. If you want to support the work that I'm doing here today, you can do a super chat in the chat today, or you can buy me coffee over at buymeacoffee.com. It's a great way to support the channel. It really helps me keep the lights on. So thank you for those of you who are have donated in the past, and appreciate all of you. Okay, so let's go back to it here. What do you say? Thank you for letting me do my little spiels here. I try not to do too much of that on the channel, but when you've got something that you believe in, you should talk about it. And I think it's okay to share the things that we're excited about. And I, of course, would love to have you join me. All right, we've got some more friends stopping in here. Steven's here. What's up, Steven the Jupiterian? Says, hey, all, been a while. Busy past couple weeks. Yeah, it's been Virgo season, Steven. It's been pretty busy. I've been pretty busy myself. I actually really love Virgo season. I love, taking the time and having the extra focus that it gives us. And we have a really beautiful Mercury right now that we're experiencing, with Mercury in its exaltation and its own domicile. So yeah, it's okay to be busy. We're really trying to pass on a legacy for the next season, preserve what needs to be preserved, and get all our ducks in a row before the dark season. Steven says, Monday will be my dad's 90th birthday. Well, happy birthday to Father Jupiterian, right? Father Steven's dad. Happy birthday to you, my friend. He was born with the sun in Libra and the moon in Aries. Oh my goodness, full moon child. Well, we're going to have one of those full moons coming up in October, Stephen, with actually the opposite of that. We're going to have, never mind. Sorry, I'm getting confused. Yes, we're going to have the sun in Libra, the moon in Aries, full moon in October. So it's going to be kind of a full moon, the reflection of your dad's natal chart. So that should be interesting too. Tom Hines, what's up? Tom says, Namaste, Spencer and everyone. Nice to see you, Tom. I believe joining us from San Francisco, as is Stephen the Jupiterian. We've got our west coast of the United States represented here. Okay, nice to see all of you. Candy Corn is here. What's up, Corinne? Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well. And thank you so much for your support in the channel as well. I know that you've been supporting the channel in various ways, and I really appreciate you, my friend. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Astrology of October 2024. Okay, so we are going to be seeing a number of interesting things. So some big picture thoughts. It is, of course, still eclipse season. We are in the middle of eclipses right now, which is called the Bardo period. Bardo basically is an in-between place, a liminal space, if you will. We are journeying from one shore to another. We just had our full moon eclipse in Pisces, and we're going to be seeing the new moon solar eclipse in the second 10-degree section of Libra moving forward at the beginning of the month. And that is a decan that is associated with oaths, contracts, commitments, relationships. So we'll break all of that down. We also have a number of squares. We have Mars squares, okay, with the Libra planets. So we're going to have a Sun and Mercury square with Mars in Cancer. And then we're going to have these Libra planets squaring Pluto. So the Sun and Mercury are going to square Pluto. So we'll break that down as well. The good news is we have some water trines in the month of October. So it's not all squares. We've got some beautiful, emotional, spiritual water trines that are going to be coming up over the course of the month. So we will break that down as well. Got a beautiful trine coming with, Venus, Mars, Saturn, Neptune. All of those planets are going to be kind of communicating with one another. So we'll break that down as well. And I think another highlight of the month is going to be the out of bounds phase of Venus. Venus OOB, you can see here, out of bounds. And that's basically a condition when Venus or any planet out of bounds is not traveling the normal declination path of the sun. It's kind of going outside of the well-trodden path. It is a maverick, so to speak. It is, some astrologers say it's a more pure expression of that planet because it's not following the sun's rules anymore. It's following its own rules and its own inclinations. And we had Mars out of bounds earlier this month, and we just had Mars return back in bounds. But now Venus is going to go out of bounds in Sagittarius through part of Capricorn. This is going to be a long Venus out of bounds period. So we'll talk about that. It's going to go all the way until December. So we'll talk about how to navigate that successfully, what some of the advantages and disadvantages of that position might be. And we'll hopefully give you an actionable plan for it. All right. So those are the kind of the highlights, I think. And so I'll check back in with all of you here. Got some new friends stopping in. Fionn, what's up, Fionn? Nice to see you, my friend. I believe Fionn is joining us from Ireland. So nice to see you, my friend from across the pond. Hope you're doing well. Hope all of your endeavors, comedic and otherwise, are going well. Deb Montgomery is here. What's up, Deb? Joining us from the Big Island in Hawaii. Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well. Hope that Hygeia, the goddess of good health, is visiting you right now, and that everything's going well over on this beautiful island that you are becoming one with the nature over there. I love hearing the stories. Deb and I have connected through book club, and she's got a lot of great stories of that beautiful, beautiful paradise. Rachel says, I'm so excited about The Hobbit. Will it be possible to sign up individually later for the planetary series? Absolutely, Rachel. So you can sign up for the 7 Decan webinars as a package, or you can sign up individually for each one, right? So like you can sign up for the moon right now. It's listed on my website. If you go to the Book Now button, that's where you sign up for classes and webinars. The store button has pre-recorded things, my Decan series. And of course, there is a Libra sale that's happening right now too. It's the last 2 days of the Virgo sale, and the Decans of Libra is going to be on sale. It's already on sale. I did it early. But yeah, if you want to sign individually for each one of those, you can do that on the Book Now button on my website, spencermichaud.com. Yeah, it'd be great to have you in those as well, Rachel. Says, I may be able to do the bundle, but just curious. Yeah, and Rachel, if you want to work something out, I know that you've signed up for The Hobbit, but if you want to work something out with the bundle, just send me an email. We'll figure it out. I'll get you all squared away with that, my friend. It'd be great to have you in the Decan walk too. It's a really cool experience, Rachel. Just being able to witness each other's stories and just the friendships that we've made. I consider a lot of the Decan walkers family at this point. I've got a gentleman who it's kind of like, he's got this uncle energy. I just love it. I love connecting, and we've really learned a lot about astrology along the way as well, as we've connected with each other's stories and really grounded it in the wisdom of the planets as well. What we do is we put a chart up for each person, and they share, hey, this is what's going on in my life, and we connect it with the transits and how it's activating different planets in the chart in real time while they're telling their stories. So we're seeing them share their stories and working as astrologers to connect it with the transits and the planets and the Decans through the language of the Decans. I didn't mention also, as part of that Decan walk, you also get all 12 of my Decan webinars, which are, a few of them are on sale right now, but they don't always go on sale. And this is a great opportunity to get that material. There's a workbook that I include, a digital workbook and digital Decan flashcards. There's all sorts of cool goodies in there. So yeah, I hope that you can join us, Rachel. Send me an email if you want to work something out. Sheila, what's up? Sheila M says, hello, Spencer. On my way to Nashville to watch your Packers win. Yes, Sheila. We had a nice win last week as Packers fans with, former Tennessee quarterback Malik Willis. Came in as a backup, had a wonderful game plan, lots of rushing, lots of running attack, and pulled out a victory against the Colts, and going down to Nashville, Music City down there to hopefully get another victory. Jordan Love might be back this week. We don't know, but that's super cool. That's very exciting, Sheila. I would love for you to check in with me and let me know how that experience is. I haven't been to a Packers game since 1987. I went to Packers and Bears at Lambeau Field. I think the Bears won, but it was the Randy Wright era, if you remember that. It was before the 30 years of great quarterback play with Favre, Rodgers, and now Love. But enjoy that experience, friend. Fionn says the Libra eclipse is in is in my first conjunct my Mars, and Mars is about to square it. Mars is also my perfected ruler. Oh my goodness. Pion. Well, you and I are going through the Mars year together. I'm in a Mars perfection myself. But I think that it is navigatable. That is a hard word to conjugate. But it's one day at a time, right? I think giving yourself and others extra space is super important. Anytime we have eclipses in angular houses like the 1st, 7th, 4th, or 10th, we're probably going to have some changes or some personal experiences with it. But hopefully, through the language of astrology and the stars, will help to guide you through a successful outcome. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the lunations. What we like to do for our monthly astrology, if you're new here. If you're new, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave me a comment, whether you're listening live or after the fact. I always love when people check in. If they are listening after the fact, it's always nice to see people checking in. We go from a big picture to the medium picture, which we're going to do now, and then we go in detailed analysis, almost day by day, week by week. We're going to be here for a few hours. It is a little bit of a longer experience, but I kind of like that. This channel is a slow burn. This is for people who want to really get into depth with astrology, to have a collaborative experience, and just hang out. This is a comfortable space to hang out, have a little snack, discuss astrology, but also to get the detailed analysis. So these lunations, we have a new moon solar eclipse, as I was mentioning, on October the 2nd at 10 degrees of Libra. It's going to be very close to Mercury. Mercury is going to be at 11 degrees of Libra. I'll break that down in depth. We'll do a whole live stream on that one as well. But it's very close to the South Node, and that South Node is also called K2. And the South Node generally represents energy leaving the physical plane, tying up loose ends, things from the past coming back, needing to be resolved. It was the severed body of a demon or a dragon that was headless. So it is something where we are releasing something. So this could be a new set of relationship obligations where we are resolving some old agreements. Maybe we're working with someone to let something go in our lives. We can break it down in depth in a second, but October 2nd, new moon solar eclipse. On the 10th of October, we have a first quarter moon at 17 degrees of Capricorn. So that first quarter moon might be we're working together with somebody, but we are having some challenging territory. We need to be careful of being overly ambitious when the moon is in the second decan of Capricorn. So it's something to keep in mind there. We have a full moon on the 17th of October at 24 degrees Aries, as I was alluding to with Stephen's dad there. That should be interesting. That one is related to winning over a hostile crowd, using your charisma and your sense of humor to maybe win someone over to your side of thinking. So we'll break that down. And then we have a last quarter moon on the 24th of October at 1 degree of Leo. That's going to be squaring the newly ingressed Scorpio sun. So this might be a challenge of like feeling some pressure to be visible or to compete, maybe in a time when we're feeling a little bit emotional or we're not necessarily getting the hungers and the needs that we have satisfied. So maybe we're releasing the need for attention, or maybe we're feeling pressure to perform when we would rather be processing our feelings. So we'll talk about that as well. We have a number of ingresses, and ingresses are basically a fancy word for a planet moving into a new sign. So this month we have Mercury moving out of Libra into Scorpio on the 13th of October, Venus moving out of its exile. Sorry, I'm going to have to think about that for a second. Out of its exile in Scorpio and moving into Sagittarius on the 17th. So we have half the month with Venus in Scorpio, half the month with Venus in Sagittarius. And then, of course, Venus is going to be out of bounds on the 25th of October. We'll talk about that. And then finally, the sun's going to ingress into Scorpio on the 22nd of October. So this is the beginning of the spooky season, right? Where the sun is going to be out of its fall, and it is going to be moving into the domicile of Mars. So the solar dignity is a little bit challenging in Libra season. It's not the favored place for the sun. It is the exaltation of Saturn. It's the dark part of the year. We have the domicile of Venus, so a lot of times our individual needs have to be balanced, okay, with the needs of others. And that can be difficult if you're a solar individual. I know for me personally as a Leo rising, who is very, appreciates being able to move under my own power and being able to be sovereign, right? Libra season can be difficult sometimes because when the ruler of your ascendant is in its fall or in its exile, the energy you're having to work with is not as natural, you're not able to draw upon the types of resources that you feel comfortable with. So if you're a Leo rising out there this month, with the sun in Libra, you might have to work with others and maybe swallow a little bit of pride and say, well, what do you think? Rather than always like dictating terms, which a lot of times us Leo types enjoy doing. Sometimes for our own, for benefit, and sometimes to our own detriment. But I digress. So those are our ingresses for the month. And then we have solar phases. So these are when a planet either moves direct or emerges from the beams of the sun, conjoins the sun. These are really important, especially in traditional astrology, because they are changes in the visibility of the planet. So in this month, we have Mars entering its retrograde shadow at 17 degrees of Cancer. Now, there is some debate amongst traditional astrologers if this is something that traditional astrologers used, but I do think it is an interesting point. This is the point that Mars is entering, that it will be retrograding back to when it finally goes direct again in February. Okay, so the 17-degree Cancer Mars position. So it is going to station retrograde on December the 6th at 6 degrees of Leo. It's going to go back into Cancer on January the 6th. And then it is going to station direct around February 23rd, somewhere around there. And it'll finally leave Cancer for good for this cycle on April the 18th. So buckle in for Mars in Cancer and Leo, because it's going to be an extended phase of that. So pay attention to what happens in the beginning of the month, because these are some of the issues that you might be having to revisit. On the 9th of October, Jupiter is going to station retrograde at 21 degrees of Gemini. So this is a time when we might be reevaluating a decision. I think that Gemini 3, the third decan of Gemini, speaks to not necessarily being able to juggle every single thought or pathway or option. And we may have recently, as Jupiter is moving in through Gemini 3, we may recently have said, I just can't do everything. But we may be reconsidering which of those things we need to let go and which of those things we actually want to commit to. This is the thing about Gemini season. I think by exploring, we can understand what we really want to commit to as well. That the transition from Gemini to Cancer often speaks to what do we want to breathe life into? What do we want to nurture into full form? So Jupiter is going to station direct at 11 degrees of Gemini on February the 4th. So we're going to have an extended period of Jupiter moving retrograde that starts on October the 9th. Pluto is going to be stationing direct on October the 11th at 29 degrees of Capricorn. So this is our final journey, probably in our lifetimes, definitely in our lifetimes, of Pluto through Capricorn. Depending on if we live 300 years, 250 years, whatever it is, for Pluto to return to this position. But we are going to, this is the last gasp of Pluto in Capricorn, and then Pluto is going to ingress back into Aquarius on the 19th of November. So tie up the loose ends in the Capricorn area of your chart. If there's anything that comes up that needs to be dealt with, this is a great time to do that, to heal any corruption that may be happening in that position of your chart, that topic of your chart, to get your structures really on lock, right? To understand how the foundation of your life works, the material structures, and if there's anything that's fallen into disrepair, to really just do the hard work of administrating that in a way that can heal and to rebuild things in a fashion that will support you in the long term. And then finally, the final solar phase we have for this month is Mercury emerging as the evening star at 16 degrees of Scorpio. That happens on the 24th of October. So this is when Mercury becomes visible again after it has become invisible under the beams of the sun. So literally Mercury, you can't see it because the beams of the sun extend out about 15 degrees on each side. So where a planet that is moving very close to the sun, it's drowned out by the light of the sun. So this is an interesting thing that ancient astrologers really looked at. They call it a moment of phasis. And this is a place where, especially with Mercury, where we receive messages. We receive really important messages that we should heed. With Mercury emerging as the evening star in Scorpio II, the second decan of Scorpio, this could really be messages in regards to some deeply enmeshed relationships where we have, I believe that decan is called mutual distillation, like exchanging energy with people, really giving us some insight into how we work together with others in a deeply bonded way, and whether that's healthy or whether it's toxic. And I think that when we're able to understand that, we can work together with others, I think, much more effectively. All right, and then finally, we have out of bounds planets here. And we have the moon moving out of bounds from the 6th of October to the 11th, and then again from the 19th of October to the 24th. And then finally, as I was mentioning, Venus will move out of bounds from the 25th of October all the way until December 3rd. From 10 degrees of Sagittarius, right on a fixed star called Antares, all the way to 26 degrees of Capricorn. Antares is a really interesting fixed star. It's one of intensity and passion. It is the heart of the Scorpion. Even though it's in Sagittarius, because of a scientific concept called precession, the constellations do not match up exactly with the tropical zodiac. Yes, astrologers know this. This is something where a lot of scientists are like, gotcha, they don't match up. And it's like, no, we get it. We've been doing this for a couple thousand years. We got it. But that's interesting to me is that this is one of intensity, of obsession. And so with Venus moving out of bounds, very close to the fixed star Antares, we have to be careful about pursuing our passions too intensely, right? So something to think about as we move forward there. All right, let me check back in, see what we got. Some new friends stopping in. Candy Corn Corinne says, my Leo rising daughter always gets sick in October. Yeah, good observation, Corinne, right? Because the first house ruler often talks about our health. I know a lot of times we look at the sixth house for health, but the first house is the body. That's your vehicle that you're moving through the world in. So yeah, I'm hopeful that I stay healthy throughout that period of time. But yeah, I always have some challenging experiences in Libra season. I think part of it is that I'm a Leo ascendant and that my first house ruler is in its fall, but also I'm a Cancer sun, and this is a sun square period, which can be challenging times when the sun is squared our natal sun in the sky. This is a first quarter square for me personally, but this can be the challenge of bringing something into being at the first quarter square of the solar year. When you get to the last quarter square, it's like, okay, how do we start letting go of things for the next cycle? But good thing to track as well. Jennifer is here. What's up, Jennifer? Nice to see you joining us from Ann Arbor, right in my backyard here. It says the daughter and granddaughter are coming to town from Florida on the 15th to the 22nd. All right. Well, we'll have to see what the stars have in store for your visit. Should be a good time. Libra season is nice for having a nice social time with people. For, in my experience, in my past, when my mom was still around, and this is a little bit difficult thing to talk about, but my mom and my stepdad would come and we would go out to the apple orchard, this place called Albers out in Manchester, Michigan. And it was a tradition every year, and we would go out there and do pumpkins and get some apple cider and donuts and whatnot. It was a fun time. So that always happened during Libra season. I think that's the point I was trying to make, this nice social time. So hopefully you can create those great memories with your daughter and granddaughter. And maybe my partner and I will go out to Albers and have a donut and pour one out for my mom there. Love the people that you're with. Don't ever take those times for granted. They can vanish in a flash. Jennifer says, got Neptune at 10 degrees Scorpio and part of fortune at 6 Scorpio in the 6th house. So, Jennifer, this is going to be an interesting set of transits for you, especially with the water trines. You're probably going to have a really interesting new moon in the first week of November. So we'll talk about that a little bit today, but mostly in the coming weeks ahead. Yeah, Deb says fire, water, polarity. Absolutely. Yeah, with that, some of those squares and whatnot going on, Deb. Steven says, my Leo rising mom, Taurus sun, Scorpio moon always has issues with hips and knees at this time. I'm telling you, pay attention to what your first house ruler is doing. For Leos, it's the sun. But like, let's say Steven the Jupiterian, pay attention to what Jupiter's doing. Like if Jupiter is stationing retrograde, maybe you might have something that you may have to reevaluate with health or something related to the body. So really pay attention, Stephen, with that Jupiter retrograde on the 9th of October. If you're like a Libra or Taurus rising, pay attention to Venus. So you might be feeling a little bit out of sorts when Venus goes out of bounds or when Venus is moving through Scorpio in its exile. But the good news is these planets, they change like pretty regularly, unless you're a Capricorn or Aquarius rising where, you got to buckle in for a couple years, wherever Saturn's placement is. But you're probably used to enduring those types of things with Saturn as your ruler. Stephen has the sun in North Node at 11 degrees Pisces in the 4th. Yes. All right. So Jennifer says, yes, I live by Plymouth Apple Orchard and go there and walk around mostly, but have had so much fun with the kids throughout the years. Yeah, it's a great experience. Those multi-generational experiences are great memories that you can make. We have pictures from going to our apple orchard where, you take pictures next to the height meter. There's like a big apple pumpkin thing with showing your heights, and seeing people over the years is super fun. So cherish those moments. All right. So friends, let's start diving into it. What do you say? Let's start looking at the energy of the sun in Libra from the 2nd of October to the 12th. Now, the sun is going to be in Libra 1 on the first day of October, but there's really no aspects that are going to be perfecting on that day. So we're going to start with the sun in Libra 2 and just getting the lay of the land here on October 1st. We see that we have the sun in Libra, right? We've got the sun in the first decan of Libra for another day, and it had just conjoined the south node. We had at the end of September, as I'm recording this, is still coming on September the 30th. We're having a Mercury Cazimi conjoining the south node. So this is a time where we might be dealing with sacrifices that we need to make for the family, for our social milieu. We might be letting go of some feelings of righteous indignation. A lot of times the way that I'm interpreting the South Node and these planets in Libra 1, because of the Decanic ruler or the Decanic daimon or spirit called the Uranus associated with that decan has a lot of associations with feelings of unfairness, the recognition of someone else's perspective, but also recognizing when something is imbalanced. And that can lead to some anger. And I think that when we have those planets moving over the South Node, releasing that anger over what we perceive as an injustice can be really healthy and healing. Relationships aren't always 100% 50-50 equal, balanced, and fair. Sometimes we have to do the hard work of rebalancing those. Sometimes we have to pull more of our proverbial weight and then understand that sometimes we will do more for others, and other times people are going to return that favor and do more for us. But keeping score is what it can be really toxic in a relationship. You never know when like a partner, like let's say a partner has a health challenge and maybe they had certain responsibilities that you had agreed upon earlier in your relationship, but now they're struggling to meet those responsibilities because of a health challenge. Well, if you've made a commitment to that person, you might have to pull more of the physical weight. All right. So these are things that happen, these changes that happen. I do see that oftentimes things do balance out between two people over the long term, but I do think that there will be times when we have to just accept that sometimes it's 80-20, sometimes it's 60-40. And when we release the need to keep score, that's going to be very helpful. We do have Mars still in Cancer. Of course, we talked about how long it's going to be in Cancer. This could lead to some challenges with some places that we normally ask for security, right? Where normally we feel supported. Mars likes to sever and separate, so there could be some severing of some sources of support. We may have some conflict in places that were normally considered safe spaces, so we need to watch out for that and work with grace over that particular energy. Mars is going to be in the overcoming square to both Mercury and the Sun during October as well, and that's a challenging spot for Mars to be in, especially for the Libra planets. A lot of the family considerations, a lot of the conflict within the family could be bringing us a Libra season that isn't necessarily as fun or as Venusian, right, as we would normally come to expect. There is a little bit of a wolves in the sheep's clothing type of experience with this. There's a little bit of a potential for the cliche is passive aggressiveness, and that is one manifestation. So sometimes we can let anger fester, and we can brood on it, which is a very favorite activity of Cancers that are upset. I'm speaking from experience. But the challenge is with Libras, oftentimes Libra will try to put a brave, pretty face on something, right? And we may be trying to gloss over some tension that we're having within our relationships, our intimate relationships, through social niceties, through social graces. And sometimes that can be helpful to getting past the conflict. But I think Mars in Cancer is going to be very active in saying, you're not going to be able to gloss this one over. You're going to have to maybe deal with the real issues rather than just kind of putting on the social face. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Painted Turtles here. What's up, Lauren? Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Excited that you're going to be joining us for one of our journeys as well. Sent you an email. Check your email. Let's see. Other things that are going to be happening. When we start the month, both of the Sun and Mercury are going to be hosted by Venus in Scorpio. It's exile, okay, in aversion to those planets. So we don't necessarily have the resources readily available to draw upon to create agreements, to create balance, to create fairness and negotiations. We have Venus in a place that is in Mars's house, where Mars is saying, I want this, and I desire this, and I want to get it no matter what. And that can be a difficult place for Venus. So watch for your desires becoming difficult to maintain or control, especially with Venus and Scorpio. There's two things that can happen with this. We can glorify relationships that are very intertwined, whether they're healthy or not. We can look to forms that have outlived their vitality and glamorize them and try to keep them alive, even if they need to be discarded and returned back to the earth. And I think that we can pursue when we need to allow things to come to us. So those are a couple things to keep in mind with Venus and Scorpio. Saturn's still in Pisces, moving retrograde. It's going to station direct in November, so we're not quite there yet. But be careful of overestimating your abilities with Saturn in the second decan of Pisces. And of course, with Jupiter in the third decan of Gemini, lots of options. And really, we have to be able to choose some things that are most important to us. And we might not be able to do everything. We can try. I'm trying. That being said, I'll speak out of both sides of my mouth. You can do all the classes, right? But maybe there's some other things that will have to be let go. But yeah, even if you can't do everything, figure out the thing that's most important to you. Figure out the things that you really want to grow into maturity. That's a great way to navigate Jupiter in the third decan of Gemini and say, okay, this is my most important priority. How do I breathe life into that? All right. And of course, we've talked a little bit about Pluto and its final journey through Capricorn, just really needing to get our systems, and especially how we relate to bureaucratic systems, really need to deal with anything that we've pushed under the rug with that. Okay, so what I would like to do before we dive into the day-to-day, I just want to show you a little bit more about Libra II. So here is the Three of Swords, the tarot card that is syncretized or concretized with this particular decan or 10-degree section. So Austin Covitt calls it two links of a chain. We have the Book T and Book of Thoth calling it the Lord of Sorrow. This decan gets a bad rap, especially with the tarot practitioners oftentimes. What I've learned about it is that yes, there can be some suffering in this decan. There can be agreements that are broken and broken hearts like we see in this picture. But this is a very Saturnian decan. And Saturn does not necessarily have to be all or nothing bad, right? Sometimes this is actually the exaltation sign of Saturn. Saturn at its best. Saturn at its best commits. It fulfills its duties and obligations. It balances that which is excessive and that which is lacking through its relationship with the goddess Nemesis. Nemesis has a very different meaning to the ancient Greeks than it does in the modern context. Nemesis was a planet or a deity that restored right proportion to the random distributions of fate brought to us by 2K or chance. So this is a great time to just do what needs to be done to bring about equilibrium. So this particular decan is associated with oaths and contracts. Now, there is a little bit of a discrepancy between what 36 Heirs of the Zodiac says with the daimon being Kairos, the opportune moment, and then what Austin teaches us in 36 Faces related to the spirit Horkos, who was a god of oaths and contracts that held people to their agreements. I like Austin's take on it because that really it helps us understand the essence of this decan a little bit better. So duties and commitments, lasting agreements, obligations, unifying separate parties. This is one thing that Venus in particular likes to do, is bring together those things that have been separated, whereas Mars is separating and severing things. It's the sort of opposite energies here. So keeping or breaking a promise is very important. If you've made a promise, there will be consequences if you break it, especially in this decan. Marriages, business partnerships, and vows to self. I think that there is a negotiating energy in this decan as well. It's not, the contract doesn't come without understanding what will benefit both parties. So you need to be able to really be a good listener to negotiate a contract that works for both people as well. So you can ask yourself during this Sun and Libra time, the 2nd to the 12th, what is required of you? What are your obligations? Understanding that the sun shines a spotlight on what your obligations actually are, right? Does this agreement work for both parties? What promises have you made to others and to yourself? How can you negotiate a win-win situation? And then finally, what are the consequences of breaking your vow? That was a really important thing to avoid in ancient Greek society. Because all of the people did not necessarily know how to write or to read, your spoken vow was very important. Your word was very important. So even if you don't have a contract, so to speak, something in writing, it is important to honor your word during this period of time as well. Or there can be consequences to that. If you break your word, if people can't trust you, they won't want to work with you in the future. If people keep breaking their vows to you, you might feel very self-protective, or you may have difficulty trusting. There's always fallout from these types of things. So this is a great opportunity to figure out which things are worth committing to, which things you can't commit to, and then being able to bind yourself to the things that are most important to you. Marriage vows are associated with this decan. This is, sometimes this is, I know we see the Three of Swords piercing the heart, but this can also be one of lasting commitment, this decan. So that hopefully that's a spin on this decan to help you through it. All right, so let's go back to the chart and let's look at some of the day-to-day. So really what we're seeing first in the first days here, let me go back here, is we have the new moon, solar eclipse. That just starts our month out, right? Isn't that interesting? What a way to start our month. So there is the new moon, solar eclipse at 10 degrees of Libra, the moon and the sun coming together very close to the south node. Whenever the sun and the moon come together or oppose each other near one of the nodes of the moon, we have an eclipse. We have Mercury that just renewed itself in the heart of the sun at 11 degrees of Libra, very close to a fixed star called Vindamayatrix. Vindamayatrix was called the Widowmaker, which is a little bit daunting. That fixed star is a little bit challenging. There's mythology associated with it about Dionysus and a youth named Ampelos, who was a grape gatherer, and he climbed a little bit too high on a grapevine and fell to his death. So this is where we get some of that association with the kind of the Widowmaker energy. I think with Vindamayatrix, there's other authors that talk about gathering information, like with the grape gathering energy. But be careful with reaping what you have sown in this particular arrangement as well. The host of this eclipse is, of course, the aforementioned Venus in Scorpio in aversion. So there's not a lot of communication between the sun and the moon and Mercury and its host Venus. We also aren't really getting help from Saturn, the exaltation ruler, because it's in aversion to this eclipse as well. I'll tell you what is aspecting this eclipse is Mars. Mars in Cancer, in the overcoming square. This could be a little bit of a rough sailing for the agreements that we've made, especially with family, especially with intimate groups that we would normally expect a celebratory energy. We could be dealing with something where it gets a little intense and we have to work through that. It is possible to do that. Like, you can work with Mars and Cancer and I think emerge intact if you know how to handle that energy. Mars and Cancer, the best parts of it are when we are protective of those people that we care about. Think about the mother bear energy. So if you do have to go to bat for someone that you are in an intimate relationship with, Mars can be helpful for that. But just be careful about lashing out in those sacred, safe spaces where you really want to cultivate relaxation, peace, intimacy. Try not to let too many things be pushed under the rug either. I think another way to deal with Mars and Cancer is to be a little bit more direct than Mars and Cancer would prefer to be. Be honest with people. If you're feeling like difficulty, just try to have a balanced, meaningful conversation, direct conversation about it, rather than letting it fester. Because if you let something fester too long, it can take on a life of its own. And that's often the issue we have with Mars and Cancer is our conflicts become inconsistent and unpredictable. And when we have an unpredictable Mars, that can become a dangerous Mars. Jennifer says, even though my dad is a Sag rising, he has a Libra second Decan as his MC, and I can definitely see this with him, very committed to my mother no matter what. Yeah, so for him, that is his public persona, right? The MC, how he relates to the world and the public, being able to be committed and honor his commitments. And it'd be interesting to see where his Venus was, and if it was well dignified, or his Saturn, like as the exaltation ruler, because that can have an effect on whether he's able to honor those commitments or whether he would break them. But it sounds like he's a committed dude, right? Deb says, this eclipse hit me on the bullseye. My dad, a huge secret, many lies coming forward, doing daily Decan walk. The cards are scary. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Deb. I know that when we have revelations of family secrets, right? Like, so this is like Mars, right? Bringing us challenges and maybe misfortune where we expected support. So it's a good example of it, Deb. That can be really unsettling because those are the things that we normally look towards. Sometimes we may have to look to other things for support. If we're not getting it with our family, maybe we get it through our our friends, or we get it through our communities, or we get it through feeling satisfaction within our work. I think this is another beautiful thing of learning astrology, is knowing where we can feel support when it isn't available in the places that we would normally expect it. So I'm sorry to hear that, Deb, and I hope that you're able to find healing through the revelation of those things. Oftentimes, we have to be able to understand something before we can heal it. Panternal says, Mars in Cancer, I've seen so many times men betraying women or abandoning the family. Yeah, that could be a part of it as well. Like just being able to, feeling separated and severed from a source of maternal or paternal support or familial support. A lot of times when people have that in their charts, they have either an absent parent, or there's domestic violence, or there is conflict within the home. It can be very challenging to heal that, because it is rooted in something that is so fundamental to our characters and to our being. So I hope and I pray that those of you who are in challenging situations are able to get the help that you need. And oftentimes that type of thing can be a secret, right? Because it's hard to get help from that when it's so immediate, right? Oftentimes those things go acknowledged. And oftentimes many years later, as Deb is experiencing, those things come out and we have to reckon with them. So just hang in there if this is happening with you. This is definitely a challenging placement, especially with the retrograde. Something from the past, a secret from the past in the family coming up that we have to deal with or reckon with. That's also something that could come up in the months ahead. Lauren says, but sometimes it's like a Scorpio moon in the chart. It can be hard to find until someone speaks up, usually the woman, about her experience. Yeah, I think that there's all sorts of different ways we experience trauma. And I don't think that Mars in Cancer discriminates whether it's a man in a chart or a woman in a chart. This can be trauma to anybody that is trying to experience some kind of support. Jennifer says, Dad's Venus is in Aquarius and Saturn in Taurus, both fixed signs. Well, there you go, Jennifer, right? Those rulers of his midheaven are in very stable signs, right? Very stable, committed, fixed positions. So it doesn't surprise me that commitment to something is important to him. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so we've got this eclipse that's going on. Again, we have the last gasp of Pluto in Capricorn, and we're building towards a Mars-Pluto opposition, and we need to be aware of that's going to be building over the course of the month. And it's kind of a yucky one because Mars is in that Cancerian position, but when we get to that, we'll break that down a little bit more. So let's keep going. And so we'll talk about this eclipse in much more depth in a future live stream. We'll spend an entire weekly live stream on it. But just one thing to keep in mind so that it's not all doom and gloom. Jupiter is in the overcoming trine to this eclipse. So even though it is not aspecting by degree, it is in a whole sign overcoming trine. And that, when we have a benefic in the overcoming trine to a lunation, that can be some protection, some good fortune. Even though we have the overcoming square from Mars, we do have Jupiter witnessing, trying to help. So maybe being able to tap into our sense of integrity, our sense of doing what is right, can help us through this period of time. But I will say, this eclipse might be about resolving old contracts and commitments, negotiating a new deal, maybe even like debt consolidation, something like that, a deeply enmeshed emotional relationship that you might be dealing with. And its first aspect technically is a square with Pluto, but in this first aspect technique, we do it with traditional planets. And the first traditional planet that it aspects is Saturn. So it's a trine to Saturn. So we may be having this experience where we're coming to terms and accepting something, but we're accepting it in a way that is positive. All right. On the 4th of October, we are experiencing the trine between Venus and Saturn. So here is one of those water trines I was alluding to at the beginning of our talk. So here we have an exiled Venus at 14 degrees of Scorpio, making a trine to retrograde Saturn at 14 degrees of Pisces. And I will put this up here so that we know we had our new moon solar eclipse the day before on the 2nd. And here is Venus trine Saturn retrograde on the 4th. Venus, Saturn associations, contacts, this talks a lot about commitment and the commitments that we have in our life, the sobriety within relationships. Even though it's in a water sign here, there could be some positive, sober conversations. Maybe some tears will fall, but it could be healing. I think that Venus in the second decan of Scorpio really shows us there's a nostalgic feeling to that decan. It's a sun-ruled decan. It's often described as being a decan of the sepia-toned photograph, where you're looking back with the pain of return. So this might be something where we're looking back at a memory, but maybe appreciating it, and knowing that it's not always going to be the same moving forward, but thinking fondly back on it, and think about how we might be able to create new memories moving forward. What commitments do we want to make? What are the good things in life? What types of things bring us support in our relationships? And with positive contacts with Venus and Saturn, that sober look at our relationships and the gratitude that we feel for not only the past, but how we can build strong moving forward, I think could be part of this. All right. And if you're a tarot aficionado, the second decan of Scorpio is the 6 of Cups, and the second decan of Pisces is the 9 of Cups. So that kind of like innocence, that memory, and the satisfying experience, right? That's what we see in the 9 of Cups, is this very satisfied figure. Okay, let's keep going. Here we have the 5th, when Mars is entering that retrograde shadow I was describing. There it is, Mars. We don't need a circle. We need an arrow for this, right? So this is Mars entering the territory that it will retrograde back to throughout the months ahead. Mars is going to retrograde on December the 6th at 6 degrees of Leo. It is going to station back, retrograde into Cancer, okay? Ingress back into Cancer on the 6th of January. And then it is going to station direct at 17 degrees of Cancer on the 23rd of February. It'll leave Cancer for good, not for good, but for this cycle, on the 18th of April. So we are beginning a journey here that begins on October the 4th and then finally resolves for good on the 18th of April. So that's almost 6 months. That's 6 months plus of like dealing with this particular challenge. I think that when we have something that's going to be a long-term challenge, we need to learn patience. I think that if there is a conflict that's coming up within your family, within your intimate relationships, I think that it's important not to burn yourself out too quickly. A lot of times, these conflicts took years, decades to come to a head. And that doesn't mean that we can just heal them overnight. Sometimes it takes time to unravel some of those knots that we've gotten into, especially with people that we care about. Like when we have conflicts with our parents when we're younger. A lot of the times our parents, they've installed those buttons that we have. We all have these buttons. We all have these irritations. We all have these traumas. And our parents, for the most part, were probably doing the best that they could at the time. Now, does that mean that they were good parents? No, doesn't necessarily mean that they were good parents, but they were probably doing the best that they could at that moment. And everyone's got a different experience. Some people are very good at their commitments, other people not so much. Some of these parents were dealing with their own mental health or physical challenges or character challenges, character building challenges. And that can be difficult to unravel over time. If you are a parent, you know how hard it can be a parent and to keep your cool and to keep your balance and equilibrium and to stay committed to doing what is right over time. It is not an easy endeavor. So that's a long-winded way of saying have grace for the people in your life during this period of time. Have grace for your parents. Have grace for your children. Have grace for your partners. Because this is going to be affecting everyone. You know, maybe you're sitting at home brooding about something, like a feeling that something was unjust from the past, right? Because we were just dealing with the South Node on Libra I. You know, and you might be getting more and more upset about it, you know, instead of like actually talking to the person. This is often what we do, right? We brood on something. But realize that everybody's going through that same Mars and Cancer energy. And when we understand that, when we try to put ourselves in other people's shoes, that can really lead to breakthroughs. And I think it's super important to do that. I've been, in the past, I've been someone who had a challenging childhood. And for a lot of my early adulthood, I held a lot of resentment and contempt for my parents for not being perfect parents. And eventually I started to see them as flawed human beings. I think that the challenge when we're young is that our parents, the power dynamic is not equal. And we often, because of that power dynamic and the developmental stages that we're in, we look to those parents as almost like demigods, right? Because they to a small toddler, we've got these giant beings that give us food and like can pick us up and move us around. It's an interesting experience, and it's hard to see them as regular human beings that are flawed, that were trying to do the best that they could while still learning about themselves, especially when they were young. So I think it's important to see people as human beings rather than as symbols of something. That's a really important transition when you become an adult and you are trying to have a relationship with your parents, or with having a relationship, if you're a parent, with your adult children, seeing people as they are rather than as we hoped that they would be is difficult, but also necessary. So really important kind of energy to understand, especially as Mars enters that Mars enters that retrograde shadow on the 5th of October. Lauren says, beautifully said, Spencer. There's a lot of grace needed here. Yeah, it's tough. And again, we all fall short of the glory. Like, saying that we need grace for each other is one thing. Actually giving it to each other is another. So it's tough. It's tough. And I'm not immune to strong feelings, to stubbornness, to failure. Like, as much as I beat myself up, like, sometimes it's even hard to admit failures. Like, I think it's almost harder to admit a failure when you're harder on yourself than others. So I think that very interesting to see how we're all going to navigate this in the months ahead. Jennifer's pointing out that Mars goes into Virgo on June 17th. Nice. I don't mind Mars and Virgo. That's my natal Mars. So having a Mars return maybe that'll be some good energy. Okay, so let's keep going. So we have Mars squaring Mercury on the 6th of October. So here is another opportunity here, right? You see Mars in the overcoming square to Mercury. This probably might be one of those days where our communication gets a little bit spicy. Those aforementioned family challenges we could be trying to renegotiate our understandings of our commitments to one another around this period of time. And again, the way to navigate this gracefully is to meet the person where they're at now rather than where they were in the past. And this goes both ways. This is true for kids who have grown up and maybe they they are disappointed in their parents and how they acted when they were younger. How do you relate to that person now rather than the person that they were when you were 4, like whatever, however many years ago it was, when they were basically children themselves? And then how, if you're a parent and you have an adult child, how do you relate to them now, as they are now, rather than the projection that you had on them when they were little? It's tough as a parent. Sometimes we want to get fixed in certain stages of life and how we relate to people, and we have an idea of what we wanted our kids to become, and then when there is a gap between our idealized vision of their life, which, I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges between parents and kids, is the difference in how the expectations as far as who people become. And I do think it is important to meet your kids where they're at, and it's a hard lesson to learn sometimes that they're not you. They're going to make different choices than you. Can be painful, especially if the values that you were hoping to impart are different than the ones that are important to them. Doesn't mean that they're wrong or you're wrong. It just means that they're different. And coming to terms with that is always a little bit challenging. And that's where a lot of the disconnect can happen with our intimate relationships. But allowing the other person to be themselves, I think, is important. Doesn't mean that you have to change your values. This is super important. Just because you are accepting of someone doesn't mean you're accepting of their values. You can still be true to what is important to you, and they can be true to what is important to them, as long as you allow each other the space to pursue the paths that are important to each of you. Dawn says, any relationship dynamic, expectations are an ass kicker. Absolutely, Dawn. Yeah, the 4 agreements comes to mind, and one of those is don't make assumptions. And this is one of the things that really gets us into trouble, is when we make assumptions about how we thought things were going to turn out, how other people should act, or things of that nature. And again, this goes both ways. Like, that's the same thing. Like I remember being very angry at my own mother for a long period of time, because she left when I was 4 years old. She took off for a couple years. She was having a lot of struggles in her life that I now understand more from an adult perspective. But it was hard for me to as the 4-year-old in me had a lot of difficulty accepting and forgiving, and a lot of sadness around that. And there were many years that I was really not as nice to my mom as I should have been, It was because I was hurting inside, and I was afraid of losing her. It was fear. That was anger. That was fear that was expressed through anger and distance. And I think that that's another thing to think about when we have these types of aspects, is what is the real emotion that we're dealing with? Oftentimes when we're angry, it is a mask for something else. Maybe it's fear of being abandoned. Maybe it's fear of losing ourselves in that relationship because we've worked so hard to individuate. There's lots of different things that it could be. But try to deal with the real emotion. One thing I've learned being a Cancer Sun and Mercury, and I can only imagine that the Cancer Mars natives can do this too, is it's very easy when you have a water sign heavy chart to lump a lot of different things together. Like, water tends to attract other water things. Do you see what I'm saying? And they become one. So it's very easy to be able to lump a lot of different feelings and emotions and experiences into one big cup of feeling and expression. And it's sometimes hard to differentiate. What are we really upset about? What are we really feeling right now? Are we upset about that thing that happened 30 years ago, or the thing that happened yesterday? I don't know. So these are some things to think about, is how can we deal with things on an individual basis rather than lumping all these things together. I know for me, if I've been repressing some of my feelings, I will get inordinately upset about a little thing that is actually me just mashing up a number of things into something, where then I'll have this reaction that isn't appropriate for the one thing that went wrong, and then the people around you will get confused. So if you actually deal with things when they happen, rather than not dealing with your feelings and then lumping it all together, I think that you can be much more effective in having a healthy emotional life. When we become unhealthy emotionally is when we don't deal with things when they happen, and then it just erupts like a volcano. So be careful of that with Mars in Cancer. Don says, for sure. I did it last night with my 32-year-old. Needed his help, and he just flat said no. I needed a ride for my daughter because I was sick. I felt slapped in the face and had to step back before I got mad. Yeah, and Don, here's the thing. He might be going through something that you just don't understand right now. He might just have some obligations where he just can't give that to you. And that's okay, right? I think that when we... And I know that it's hard to, and I don't want to make you feel bad about this, because these are hard things to go through, right? But I do think that when we have adult kids, and when we relate to adult children as parents, and them relating to us, we need to relate to each other as adults, not at the same parent-child dynamic that we had when they were 10 or whatever, where when we asked them to do something, they didn't really have a choice. They couldn't say no when they were 10 for the most part, but when they're 32, they have the right to say no. and it doesn't mean they don't love you. It just means that they might have some things that they're going on in their own life. Don says, I still think he was wrong, but I had no clue what was going on. We'll talk about it when we see each other. Texts just always seem abrupt anyway. Yeah, there you go. So before you get super mad about it, Don, and brood on it, get some more information, because he might have something that you aren't aware of right now that's going on that was making it difficult for him to carry out that responsibility. Lauren says, I think it was Fred Rogers who said, anger is an emotion that can be helped when we ask ourselves or another, are you feeling misunderstood? Ooh, I like that, Lauren. Lauren says, I found that especially helpful to ask with young children. Are you feeling misunderstood? That's a good one. I really like Fred Rogers. I really enjoyed that documentary about him. That was I saw that in the theater. That was maybe the last movies I saw in the theater, was the documentary about Mr. Rogers, who's a Pisces, by the way. And he just had a really great way of speaking to us and the child within us in a way that wasn't condescending, in a way that was empowering, but also compassionate. So I'm a huge fan, and that's good. So that's good advice. Don says, sounds like a great thing to ask my Aries sun husband too. He's always pissed about something. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, oftentimes just asking a question rather than making a statement can lead to much, much better outcomes. Again, that's the not making assumptions. So that's going to be really important, I think, even more important when Mercury squares Mars. Try not to make assumptions. Try not to lump together things that you're getting upset about, especially obligations, right? Because Mercury is in that second decan of Libra. All right, if we keep moving forward, we do have another trine on the 8th. Now here is a number of trines. We have Venus trining Mars. Okay, so this is another one of our water trines that we alluded to. Let's make that one blue. So here's the Venus-Mars trine. And then we also have a Mercury. We'll put that in green. We have Mercury trining. Whoops. Oh, it all went away. Sorry. So here's the Venus and Mars trine. And then we have Mercury trining Jupiter. So 2 trines on the same day. So I really think that this might be interesting, because we have a difficult Mars-Mercury square the day before, and then we have these trines really a few days after. So maybe we have a difficult conversation, and maybe that helps us to move forward. Maybe this is a time where we're able to move forward with after a difficult conversation and be able to understand the other person's perspective. One of the things about Mercury in Libra 3 is Libra III talks about being able to increase that which is lacking, decrease that which is excessive, the quality of nemesis, the restoring of balance through maintenance. So we might be having conversations about how to restore balance. And with trine to Jupiter in Gemini, maybe it's restoring balance to the choices that we've had to make over the last few weeks where we figured out that, hey, we can't do everything. This might be a really important conversation to understanding which things we can do and which things we can't. For all Dawn knows, her son might have just, I don't know if her son has kids or whatever, but maybe he was having a really difficult time with one of his kids, and he's just like, I can't do that right now. I've got to, deal with little Billy's, I don't know, tantrum or something. I don't know. I'm riffing, but there are always some things that we don't completely understand about what other people are going through. So maybe when we get that awareness, we can make the adjustments. And with Mercury trining Jupiter, I think this is an important time to make adjustments so that we don't get overwhelmed by all of the thoughts and feelings that we have. Same thing with Mars and Venus trining. This could be like where our actions and our desires are in harmony with one another. So this could be a time where we're having the next stage of a productive conversation where we had the difficult airing of grievances, renegotiations, and now things are starting to flow again towards the 8th. Now, what I find interesting about this narrative is that the next day, Jupiter is going to station retrograde. So here is Jupiter retrograde at 21 degrees of Gemini. So what types of experiences might we have with Jupiter stationing retrograde? Now, first of all, one thing to keep in mind with that particular placement is Gemini 3 is a solar decan in a Mercury-ruled sign. And one of the ways that I've seen this decan described is through high contrast. There's a spirit in that decan called Praxidike, who is an exactor of justice. I believe Austin Coppock calls this decan the executioner's sword because of the need to eliminate one of these options. One of the negative qualities of this decan is making a judgment and making an ultimatum, a line in the sand. So let's say we didn't navigate those previous Mercury-Mars conversations gracefully, and we made a line in the sand. Well, this could be an opportunity to revisit that and to say, well, maybe there's some more information that we didn't have. Maybe we shouldn't draw a hard line. Maybe we have to be a little bit more comfortable with the ambiguity moving forward. So I do think that there will be an opportunity to revisit an execution that we have made, whether it's executing someone and saying, I'm not going to talk to that person, and saying, maybe reconsidering that, reconsidering some line in the sand that we drew, or maybe we've made a choice. Maybe it's not that intense. Maybe we just said, there's only a certain amount of things that we can do. Maybe we reconsider the things that we discarded and say, well, maybe I can do this thing, or maybe I chose the wrong thing. And I know that brings up some anxiety because as we have Jupiter moving through Gemini, we're saying, well, what's the right choice? I've got all this information. The right choice will reveal itself to you. It doesn't mean that every choice that you make between now and Jupiter stationing retrograde is the wrong one. It just means that there may be a few that you have to revisit. And I would say that this is especially important for your Sagittarius house, okay, and for your Pisces house. So these two topics in your chart are going to be up for review. So there might be something that you thought was resolved that you need to revisit and potentially think about how you might make a choice moving forward. And you'll have all the way until February to make this choice. So you don't have to make it overnight, okay? That's one thing to keep in mind. All right. Let's keep going. Next, we have our first quarter moon, and this happens on October the 10th. So here we have the first quarter moon at 17 degrees of Capricorn. And the first quarter moon is usually a crisis point. And in this case, It is a crisis of manifestation, a crisis of bringing something into the world, a tension point. When we have the last quarter moon, that can be an existential crisis where we're questioning things. Here we might be saying, well, what do we need to do to move this forward? We planted the seed at the new moon solar eclipse. We planted the seed of understanding what our commitments and obligations were. And here we have the moon in its exile in Capricorn saying, well, it's going to take some hard work to get this, whatever needs to be built together, built. All right. We may not have the resources that we were hoping for. We may be in some rocky terrain, potentially. We also, during this day, have an opposition to Mars in Cancer that is going to make it even stickier. Maybe we thought we had support from our domestic situation, but we've got a lot of commitments out in the world, and that's making our life a little bit difficult. You know, maybe there's, this happens a lot. This happens a lot. When we feel like we are trying to achieve something in our professional lives, if we have conflicts going on at home, that makes it twice as difficult sometimes because we want to be able to relax. We need balance in our life. When you're pursuing something professionally, it takes a lot of energy. And when you're lacking support at home, there's just no rest. So I would say that the important thing here is, how do we balance out our need for achievement and our need for support, right? And I think that one of the lessons in Capricorn 2 in particular says hubris leads to a fall. And hubris can be being overly ambitious and not taking care of your body, of aiming too high, of, you know, not respecting the time. Like, here's an example: the cliche of the parent that goes off to work every day but misses little Johnny's soccer game, and it becomes this conflict because they're like, oh, you're always working late at the office and you're not supporting little Johnny in his World Cup dreams or whatever. And these are, I mean, I'm making fun of it, but these are real problems that we have in life, and finding the right balance is an act of maintenance. It's not always going to be perfectly balanced. And this might be the moment where we're trying to figure out, okay, which of these ambitions can we really achieve realistically? And then what other commitments do we have at home that need our attention as well? And, you know, this isn't always a one-to-one type of thing. Like, many of us work from home, so it doesn't have to be home or out in the world, but you get the idea. Like, our intimate relationships, our intimate commitments versus maybe our more public or professional ones. So there's a little bit of a challenge at this point in mid-early month with our first quarter moon. Okay, now on the 11th, we have Pluto stationing direct. So here is Pluto stationing direct on the 11th. Okay. Let's get it on the chart here. Pow. There it is. All right. So let's talk a little bit about this Pluto. Now, Pluto is called a transpersonal planet, which means that modern astrologers think of it more as a planet that has more social effects than personal effects. Now, we can argue about that. It doesn't mean that because Pluto is a slower moving, larger effect type of planet that we don't feel it personally. We do, because we're part of a society. But I do think that this could be talking more about the ways that we deal with social environments. The third 10-degree section of Capricorn often is about how we administrate power, how we take responsibility for others, the bureaucratic systems that we work through. I often associate this with government bureaucracies. So we could see something in our personal lives and collectively starting to move forward again with a bureaucratic system. One thing that just comes to mind right now, and I don't know how soon they have to make an agreement, but in America, there is a budget that they have to approve to avoid a government shutdown. And maybe this is a moment where things start to move forward. I don't know what the deadline is for that, but That's just the type of thing that we could see, even if it's not that particular thing. But I think that the other thing is that we may start to understand how to unclog the metaphorical toilet of our life. That's to me what I see Pluto as, is it's a toilet unclogger. It says, hey, you've this thing's fallen into disrepair. You're going to have to deal with it. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be fun. It's going to stink. But it's important if you want clean water to flow again. And this could be an opportunity to do that in the Capricorn area of your life. So that gets us to the end of Libra II. So let's take this opportunity right now. Do me a huge favor. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll take a little stretch break here. So while we stretch, get yourself a drink of water, get yourself a snack, leave me a comment in the chat. Let me know how you're doing out there. Go over to spencermichaud.com and check out some of my offerings, especially on the Book Now button. There's a lot of classes that are going on right now. We've got our fall class offerings. We've got the Decan walk that's going to start on October the 7th. It's going to be the first and third Monday of the month for 12 months. We have the Dignity and Devotion webinars, where we're going to be talking about the 7 traditional planets, how they function through their dignities, astrological remediation for those planets if you have difficult placements, how to create a ritual relationship with those planets through things like, practicing the Orphic hymns, through creating an altar space as well. Those are things that Tanya does some really incredible work on, and she has created some amazing materia to draw down the energy of the planets through her work at Third Coast Mojo, which you can find on Etsy. And then we're also doing the guided group study, going on a Tolkien journey with the Hobbit. My hope is that this is the first in a number of guided group studies related to the Tolkien experience. I would love to do The Lord of the Rings as a series as well. Maybe do one session on the Fellowship, another session on the Two Towers, a final one on Return of the King. And if we're still crazy enough to keep going, maybe we'll do the Silmarillion. I think that would be super fun to just, that's another year and a half of content there. That would be awesome. If we enjoy this and we're going on this journey, keep your eyes peeled for that. But every journey has to have a beginning, and this one's going to be through the Hobbit. So I'm super excited about that, and I hope that you join us for whatever it piques your interest. If one thing is more your speed than the other, totally cool. If you want to do it all, let me know. There's a fall bundle. You get a free 2-hour Mythos reading with that. And of course, payment plans are available. Okay, so let's check in with this chat here. Jennifer says, the quarter moon will be opposite to my Mercury along with conjoining of Mars. Oh my goodness, Jennifer. Yeah, I'm curious what the status is with all of the things that you were going with, the challenges, right? That you've been going through some transitions with your family, and these squares might be about how do you what commitments have you made? What types of things are you able to do, and which things do you need to delegate? Delegating might be part of that. I think this is an important lesson to learn around this month, is how do we delegate instead of having to take on all the burdens ourselves. It's not always easy to do that. Sometimes sharing the responsibility can be easier. Pluto's going to be opposite your sun. Oh, Jennifer, it's going to be tough. We'll get through it though, friend. We'll get through it. Painted Turtle says, my dream school. Which school is that? Did I talk about a school? What's your dream school? Tell me what the dream school is. Is that, is this your dream school? That's the things we're studying here? That'd be cool. Anyway. Sorry, I need more context. Your school. Yes, okay, good. All right, good. I was like, did I talk about? Yeah, school. Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that, Lauren. The bundle it's gonna be super fun, and I think that you're signed up for it, so I really appreciate that. I super appreciate you joining us on that journey. There's a couple things you need to do to finish the registration process, so I sent you an email with that. Check that out. Make sure that you get everything squared away. It's nothing too complicated. You just have to sign up for each individual thing after you've bought the bundle package, and I can help you through it if you need help. All right. My school. Yeah, it is school. I love it. I love teaching. That is one of the things that I have found as my passion. Um, I was a professional musician, but I always loved teaching music, and I always found that when I was teaching music, I was teaching these types of, I don't know, philosophical life lessons along the way, and I was using music as a vehicle for that. And now now astrology is the vehicle, and the essence of it is the same. But it's it's interesting how our vehicles change over time. I think it's a beautiful thing, and sometimes when we just accept that, hey, the vehicle is going to be changing this time around, life gets a lot easier, and without trying to maintain a form that wasn't bringing us, wasn't as effective in delivering the message. All right, so let's go down back to our exploration of this month, and we're going to start talking about Libra 3. So what I would like to do is I am going to bring up to the stage our slide on Libra 3. And this is from the Decans of Libra webinar. It's 20% off right now in the store, but it is also part of the Decan Walk. If you purchase the Decan Walk, you will get the Decans of Libra webinar along with all 12 other webinars that I did on the Decans, as well as a PDF workbook, Decan flashcards. It's pretty cool. And these webinars, I feel they are. I'm really excited about this work that I was doing. I'm not going to try to toot my own horn too much, but I put a lot of energy and effort and a lot of heart into it, and a lot of details. And I would try to be as thorough as possible and look at these decans through as many lenses as possible to get a really complete picture of them. So there's a lot of great stuff in there. We talk a lot about the planets in the signs as well and how they function, mythology, tarot, fixed stars, etc. But let's talk about Libra 3 here. Libra 3, okay. Let's see, Pain Turtle says, it's funny, I just dropped out of college when Neptune entered my ninth, and now you're delivering me something better than I could have imagined near the end of this past. Hey, well, there you go. See, life has a funny way of working out, doesn't it? I'm excited. I'm in a ninth house perfection year right now, too, so I'm really leaning into the teaching part of it and the higher education part of it. And yeah, this is our own little school here, and it's exciting. And it's what I love about it, Lauren, and if you let me wax poetic for just a minute here, friends, I love that we get to have these meaningful relationships with each other. A lot of times in school, I wanted to have that support, that familial support, and that was hard to achieve sometimes. But in these instances, there is a depth to it. There is a connection that's very hard to get in traditional school. And that's something that I'm really passionate about providing, is that kind of experience for people where we're learning this knowledge, but we're also creating this community where we're supporting one another and witnessing each other's journey. So I'm really excited you're going to be joining us. Okay, so Libra 3, you can see that there is a Four of Swords card that is associated with this. And Austin Cobbett calls this decan a gyroscope. We have Book T and Book of Thoth saying that it is rest from strife. So we have a figure in the Four of Swords, a knight who is lying in a tomb, right? Or the tomb of the knight. And there's this kind of this peaceful energy with it. This is a decan of finding peace within the chaos. And it is an internal peace. The eye of the storm, people will talk about, right? Making adjustments to maintain your equilibrium. I've been talking about that over the course of this talk today. Is, balance isn't something that is assumed. You have to work towards it. And this decan really teaches us the adjustments that we need to make. Connecting with the hub of the wheel. I love that idea. I love that idea, especially with astrology, because you could see an astrological chart as a wheel and how it spins around. And sometimes you're at the top, sometimes you're at the bottom. But when you connect with the center, those are the internal values that you have. Those are the things that guide you throughout your daily practice, no matter what twists and turns of fortune or fate come your way. That's part of Libra 3. Of course, we have Nemesis, the daimon or spirit associated with Libra 3, which is an adjuster, right? It was something that stabilized the twists and turns of 2K or fate and fortune that we're random. So it's through our own efforts that we can create peace. I happen to have the part of spirit in Libra 3. And part of spirit shows you, I've heard a really great description of part of spirit. I believe it was Schmidt that talked about this. It also might have been Dimitri George, but forgive me if I'm misquoting one of them. But they talked about the part of spirit being how you meet your fate. And what types of experiences, what kind of reactions do you have when you meet something that is fated? And with myself having Libra 3 on my part of spirit, I tend to get very quiet when I meet a turning point in my life. I tend to get very still. And a lot of times, what is required of me by fate is to become a balancing force for somebody or something. Like, oftentimes when I have clients, I'm reading them, like I'm literally reading their chart, but I'm reading their energy, their body language, etc. And oftentimes I will provide the alternative energy. Like if someone is very hubristic, I probably sometimes am going to offer some humbling observations. If someone needs a boost of confidence, I'm their biggest cheerleader. Like, I think that that's kind of how that is played out in my life, being that balancing force. So this is something that the sun, being in Libra 3, is going to shine a big spotlight on, is how do you maintain your own inner peace when things around you aren't necessarily stable. The key with this, too, is to be able to bring peace to a situation rather than making everything around you perfect. When you become centered, you can help create better outcomes around you. This was a huge lesson for me, which was not necessarily having to find the perfect external environment, the perfect peaceful environment. When I become peaceful, I'm contributing to that peaceful environment. Okay, same thing like what I do here. I try to be the hub of the wheel here for all of you. It's not always perfect, but through me being the most centered that I can be, hopefully I'm bringing that into the world. All right, so actions that stabilize the randomness of fortune, that's 2K. Receiving your due. Nemesis was something, a force that brought you the consequences of your actions. So this could be something we're experiencing. Mental discipline and poise are very important here. This is a Decan, a 10-degree section, where we have some really interesting fixed stars, too. We have Spica at about 23 or 24 degrees of Libra, and the fixed star Arcturus in this space of the zodiac as well. Spica is a really fortunate fixed star. It talks about gifts that we might be receiving. It's also was a guiding star for sailors. They called it the Stella Maris. And Arcturus is a trailblazing star. It represented the plowsman, the transition between a hunter-gatherer society to an agricultural one. So there is some themes of like trailblazing, plowing new fields, new areas of life, but also of how do we create a society that has more, peace or grace, etc. Not to say that agricultural society is better than hunter-gatherer society. Honestly, we could make an argument for the opposite. But this kind of domestication energy is part of Arcturus. So questions you could ask during Libra 3. What adjustments are necessary to maintain harmony? How can you find your center within an ever-changing cosmos? What excesses need consolidation and what lack needs increase? What gifts or challenges are your due? Where is your mental discipline required? And then finally, how can you bring internal peace to your external environment? Okay? So those are things to consider as we look at these aspects. So going back to the chart, we're going to start off with the 13th of October. And on the 13th of October, we have Mercury ingressing into Scorpio. But before it does, let's go back. I'll show you what's happening here. If we go back a few hours, we're going to see Mercury at the final degrees of Libra, 29 degrees of Libra, making a square to Pluto. So this is when we were talking about the squares to Pluto. We have these planets that are going to be ingressing into Scorpio from the final degrees of Libra, squaring Pluto before they change signs. So here we have an experience where we are trying to maintain our equilibrium and make adjustments in that plutonic area that we were describing earlier. So this to me could be the phone call that you have to make to a government entity or a bureaucratic system where you have to wait on the phone to get your, I don't know, a debt thing adjusted, or to get some services or something like that that you've been in need of. And you may be running into some bureaucratic challenges, but you're having to maintain your own peace and centeredness. Here's one thing that I've experienced in the past. I don't know about you, but I've had some experiences where I got frustrated with someone on the phone who was a cog in a much greater machine, and I got angry with them. Like, right? They weren't giving us what we wanted because they probably couldn't. They were didn't have the authority, and like, let me speak to your manager, whatever. And what I've learned is that when you treat people like that with indignation or righteous indignation, or you're an asshole to people on the phone, when they have something that you want, you're less likely to get it. And if you are nicer to those people and you treat them with respect and you treat them with the understanding that, yeah, hey, they only have the power to do so much. And you understand that it takes patience and your own peace is going to help smooth the process out, you'd be amazed at what happens in those situations. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to get what you want in that moment, but it definitely increases the chances that someone will take the extra step to help you. Super important to understand. It's very easy to not acknowledge someone else's humanity when you're just on the phone with them, or when they're following what seems to be a script. And oftentimes they have a script because they have to have that script. That there has to be a system of organization to be able to deal with the public in a professional manner. So if you're having conversations with people in positions of power and you're feeling the frustration because the system isn't working the way that you want it to, bringing your piece to that situation can be extremely helpful. So I think that that's what I'm seeing here with the Mercury square Pluto from these two particular decans. And then immediately after that, okay, the same day, you see Mercury ingressing into Scorpio. Now, this is a shift, right? We have Mercury now being hosted by Mars. It's in a trine with its host Mars. And this is something where we might be having to deal with some disappointments. Maybe we have a difficult conversation with somebody and it leads to a little bit of sadness. The first decan of Scorpio shows us the Five of Cups associated with it, where we see a figure who's mourning the loss of 3 cups, but doesn't understand, can't see necessarily that there are 2 cups standing behind them. So I think that even though we might, let's say we run into the brick wall, let's say we run into a system that is corrupt and we aren't getting everything that we need, being able to shift towards the gratitude of what we do have that is supporting us is going to be important. Doesn't mean we shouldn't mourn our losses. I think when you have Mercury in Scorpio, understanding the disconnect between our desires and getting them fulfilled is important, but also understanding that not every desire needs to be fulfilled. And when we mourn the things that we can't have and fall back into acceptance, that's when we're starting to rebalance the scales once again. So I do think that this is part of this journey that we're experiencing here. Okay. And I think that we are going to be working with Mars now in the way that we communicate, rather than having the tension against it. I think the other thing that this transition could really speak to is when Mercury moves into Scorpio, the like superficial niceties, all that kind of goes out the window. Mercury in Scorpio says, I'm not going to be satisfied with just like someone smiling at me when we need to have this deep conversation about what's really the problem. So you might find yourself having more emotional conversations, more in-depth conversations. They may be painful. You may have some deep feelings bubble to the surface. There may be some tears shed, but that may be necessary. And that can be very cathartic. When you let go of the feelings that you're holding on to, you don't have to let them fester into something nasty inside of you anymore. That's when you feel relief. That's how you get relief, through honesty, right? Through feeling your feelings rather than repressing them and brooding on them. So I think that that's part of what we're seeing here mid-October with the ingress of Mercury into Scorpio. There is also another aspect happening that day that I think could be actually very beneficial. So here we see the sun at about 21 degrees. Okay, let's go a couple hours forward here. There's the sun at about 21 degrees of Libra, trining Jupiter retrograde at 21 degrees of Gemini. Okay, so here is another opportunity for us to get an awareness of what we need to do or what actions we need to take to balance out our responsibilities, to balance out our explorations. Sun Jupiter's trines are usually they can be very fortuitous. Maybe this is shining a light of awareness on a decision that you made that you need to reconsider. It's very airy, it's very intellectual. There could be an abundance of thoughts that we experience with this Jupiter-Sun trine. But I think that the combination of that and Mercury moving into Scorpio is an opportunity for us to get real about our feelings, maybe to talk about them, but also to feel them, okay? This is heading towards the fixed stars that we talked about, Spica and Arcturus. I often find that there are some beautiful moments when planets go over Spica in particular. Just some really nice exchanges, social exchanges with people, feelings of gratitude for the things that support us. That could be coming with this particular arrangement. Now, it's not without its challenges, okay? Because there is the 14th with squares. I mean, this happens. We have trines, we have squares, we have all of it. I mean, there's always going to be a planet somewhere doing something, okay? So here is October the 14th, which is a Monday, after the weekend. Now we're getting back down to business. We've got Mars in the overcoming square to the sun. And we have Venus, who is applying to an opposition with Uranus. So this day actually looks like one of the more spicy ones. We just had the Sun Jupiter trine, and now as that begins to separate, we're going to have to get real with the Mars Sun square and the Venus Uranus opposition. Now, the combination of these things together, again, now that we have Mars in the third 10-degree section of Cancer, that happened around the 11th, okay? We switch from Mars playing its song or its dirge like in the area associated with the Three of Cups, which shows us the walled garden, right? Those safe spaces that are social, not necessarily one-on-one relationships, but like a group of friends coming together where there could be some challenges there. This particular decan shows us a figure in the Four of Cups sitting under a tree, feeling overly satiated. He's kind of over it. You know, he's got his arms folded. He's got 3 cups in front of him. There's a 4th cup being handed to him, but he's like saying, nah, I don't want it. I'm full. If I have any more, it's going to make me sick. So Mars in this particular decan can show us the challenges of excesses. We may be craving luxuries beyond our grasp. So we have to be very careful about that in particular with Mars in this decan. What Mars can do in this decan, like let's say that this decan has to do with craving luxuries. Sometimes Mars can take those luxuries by force or deception. This is something that is talked about in 36 Faces by Austin Coppock, is Mars being able to manipulate through to get these needs met. So we have to watch out for that, and we might have to protect ourselves from that. this is an important opportunity for us to set boundaries, I think. So if we are feeling like we're in a situation where we're not necessarily, dealing with upstanding individuals, being able to say no, being able to extricate ourselves from the difficult situation, I think is going to be important. Now, with Venus opposite Uranus, we may get some shocking surprises in our relationships as well. We may have some challenges through glorifying a form that isn't bringing us vitality anymore. Okay, and we might get a really lightning bolt of awareness that, hey, this isn't working. Venus is in its own decan in Scorpio 3, but we see it associated with the Seven of Cups, which shows us an illusion of trying to keep something alive that just isn't bringing us vitality anymore. So be careful of trying to glamorize or breathe life into a dead form. Now, the key with that is understanding that when you let go of a form that doesn't bring you vitality, you're actually liberating the energy to do something else, to find a new form that actually will support you. So if you think about it in those terms, that can help move you in a positive direction. All right, let's keep going. Sorry, I need to get a little snack here. One moment. It's mulberry time. We go on a journey with these monthly experiences. It's a lot of astrology to pack into one particular experience, but I'm super grateful for all of you that ride it out with me here. It's not always easy to talk for like 3 hours straight, and you got to refill the well. All right. So, I think now that we've got a little blood sugar boost, let's keep rolling. Dawn says, I'm horribly sad every time I miss the live. Well, put it on the schedule, Dawn. Hit that notification bell so that we could, when we're going live, right? Oh, man. Jennifer says, things going on right now seem to be in a lull, which I'm grateful for. You know what? That is something I have learned, Jennifer. That when things feel like that not a lot's happening, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Those are times to be appreciated. All right. We're fueled up. So we move forward past this day of potentially of reckoning, and we get to the next day where we have Venus trining Neptune. This is another one of our water trines that we were alluding to earlier. So here we have Venus at 27 degrees of Scorpio and Neptune at 27 degrees of Pisces, trining one another. Usually Venus-Neptune trines are pretty, dreamy on some level. Be careful with this one. Even though it is a trine, just that decan of Scorpio 3, is already prone to illusion. And when it comes into contact with a planet like Neptune, that distortion of reality can go into overdrive. So be very careful around this period of time of getting outside of your ability to discern fact from fiction. And I think, again, the other challenge with Venus in that decan is glamorizing things that just need to be let go of. I mean, there is some beauty in decay. I think if you can embrace the letting go process, you're doing this trine well. But if you're trying to keep something alive that wants to dissolve, this is another energetic sort of experience of Neptune. In my experience, is a dissolving action. Maybe this is the moment that you're able to finally dissolve your attachment to something that you thought was bringing you life, but actually was draining you of it. That's an important thing. I think I've talked to a lot of clients who have Scorpio 3 placements, and many of them have struggled with addiction. Like sometimes people, when they're experiencing deep pain and trauma, they will turn to something that will, they think will make them feel better, but actually is helping to perpetuate that negative cycle. And that is something I see a lot. I see a lot of people who overcome addiction in this decan as well, because this is the rebirth moment with Scorpio, this transformative experience, right? Where we finally like consolidate all of those experiences and like compost it. And then there's fertility in what remains. Okay. There is the substrata for new life, but it comes through letting go. Okay. The moon is there too. Yes, right? We've got the Pisces moon there. Oh my goodness. The moon just activating all that. That might be that'd be a great day, I think, to watch a fantasy movie or, some kind of emotional movie that helps with the catharsis of emotions. That was actually one of Venus's roles in ancient Greek civilization. Was she was sort of the responsible for the purity of the Greek theater, the cathartic quality of Greek theater. Like, art in the past was not just this frivolous thing that many of us think it is these days, or that utilitarian society thinks it is. It was a opportunity to feel things so that we can let them go. Catharsis is like we're letting go of these feelings, and art has the unique ability to do that for us. And so do the good movies, right? Good movies, good songs. When they make us feel something, when they touch us on a deep level, it purifies us. It purifies us of all those things that we were holding on to that might have been negative. So this might be a good opportunity for that. Oh, yes, Jennifer says, that'll be hitting my moon in Jupiter. Well, this is a day to let the tears flow. And sometimes having a good cry it's fine. It's not something to be afraid of. It's something to embrace. All right. As we move forward, we are hitting our full moon in Aries. So check this out. So this is October the 17th. Here's our full moon in Aries. And it's at 24 degrees of Aries. It's pretty close to Chiron in this chart. I don't super use Chiron a ton, but I can appreciate it when it's close to a lunation. I would say the big boogeyman in this chart is the square from Mars. So this is a T-square basically with Pluto. And these aren't exact. They're not exact aspects. The moon is separating from Mars, but it is separating from Mars and then heading right towards Pluto. So I do think we're going to be feeling this tension, this cardinal cross tension at this full moon. Mars is going to be the host of the moon. So I think that this is an opportunity, as we were describing earlier in the broadcast, to be able to win over a hostile crowd, okay, through our humor, through our charisma, through showing people why agreeing with us has advantages, rather than like bludgeoning them over the head with an Aries axe. This is like giving them a flower and saying, hey, here's a free flower. Like, wouldn't it be great if we could agree? Isn't this funny? And maybe there's a joke involved with it. It's a Venus ruled decan in a Mars ruled sign. So being able to use your Venusian charisma to win someone over could be a big part of this full moon. And I think that the challenges are going to be the ones that we're dealing with for quite some time with Mars and Cancer. This is a position where maybe it is a craving of luxury. Maybe it is feeling a lack. I mean, there is a spirit in that decan. It's Hecate. And Hecate giveth and Hecate taketh away, being a triple goddess, a goddess of moon phases, right? So while we do have abundance in that decan, there's also experiences of scarcity. And sometimes we swing between those two experiences with Cancer. So there might be some conflict around that, the scarcity versus abundance question. And what do we do with excess? What do we do with the excess things that we have? Sometimes we acquire some things that we don't need, and we have to figure out how we can release those things so that we don't start hoarding and having piles and piles and piles of Lord of the Rings cards in one corner of your office. I don't know anything about that. What? Did I say that out loud? No. No. It's true. I've been collecting this card game for a while, and I have some extras, and I need to do something with them. Probably get rid of them, sell them, so I don't need them. But there might be something like that in your life. It might not be that particular type of thing, but how do we release that which is excessive and be able to share our abundance with others? Okay. Lauren says, good remedies for a Pisces moon. Movies to feel, absolutely. To explore and release, yes. Lauren says, I'm literally writing in my astrology journal an Aries flower instead of an axe. There you go, good. Yeah, and that's going to be, I think that's important, is the sun is still in Libra. We're still being tasked with finding harmony, balance, equilibrium. We still are shining a spotlight on the social graces that we have with one another and the agreements that we make with one another to make society and relationships function. And you have to meet people halfway, right? And sometimes we do have to protect our own interests, but this is not the season to be a brute, right? To use brute force. This is a great opportunity to utilize all of the good qualities of being able to share your passion with people. Show people why they should agree with you and make it attractive to them, rather than like saying, well, here's why you should give up everything you want and give me everything I want because what you want is stupid. That's the axe. How can you say, well, wouldn't it be great if like we did this, because look how wonderful it'd be. You'd benefit from it. I'd benefit from it. We'd all benefit from it. So being able to do it from the positive, I think it is going to be much more effective. All right. Thank you, Jennifer. So let's keep moving forward. We'll do a full live stream on that full moon. We always do live streams for the new and full moons and talk about the astrology surrounding them and the weeks around them as well. We call them full moon, new moons, but it's just an excuse to get together and talk the astrology. So then we are going to see Venus ingressing into Sagittarius shortly after that full moon. So this is the same day. And here we have Venus moving into Sagittarius. There it is. Later on in the afternoon. So we get all that catharsis out. We let go of the forms that aren't serving us. And then we have this liberated energy. The transition from Scorpio III to Sagittarius I is one of speed and movement. You finally liberate all that stuck energy, that fixed energy. It wants to go somewhere. It says, let's get it going. Let's find a new vehicle to drive. Let's find a new body. Let's find a new host. Like there's a spirit in that Decan called Loimos, which is the god of plagues. So we need to find a new goal, lest we become a parasitic host for the goals of others. Sometimes when we have liberated energy and passion, that can be attractive to other people, and they can take advantage of that, and we become servants of their goals. So it's important when Venus is in Sagittarius I to have something that you are moving towards. And you can be helping someone else, but as long as it's conscious, right? And keep in mind, we're going to be seeing Venus move out of bounds pretty soon. So we're probably going to want to move quickly, but now we have Jupiter in Gemini hosting Venus instead of Mars in Cancer. And instead of a trine with Mars in Cancer, we have an opposition with Jupiter. And Jupiter is retrograde. So one of the things that I think that we're going to have to figure out is we're probably not going to be able to move as quickly as we want to when Venus moves into Sagittarius. We have a lot of considerations. We have a lot of options. And Jupiter is moving very slow, moving backwards. There is a good time to reconsider some things we are passionate about before we take action on them. So this is an opportunity we have here. All right. When we get to the 22nd, let's keep going. Keep on rolling. rolling through a Friday, rolling, October time. So we have kind of a quiet period, right, between the 17th and the 22nd. I will mention that the moon is out of bounds from the 19th to the 24th, so we may be feeling a little bit burnt out, like a little tired. We also had an out of bounds period from the 6th to the 11th, so keep that in mind that those are extra emotional times. We may push our bodies beyond their limits. Maybe we're feeling a little wrung out emotionally from the full moon, through all those negotiations, through all those cathartic, Venusian, Scorpionic energies, right? All of the sad or scary movies that we watched. And then we get to this point on the 22nd, which is kind of a big day in the month, where Mercury trines Saturn. Okay, so here's Mercury at 14 degrees of Scorpio, and it's trining Saturn, okay, at about 13. It trines at 13 or 14 here. And we also, on the same day, have that same condition that we had with Mercury, with the Sun now squaring Pluto. So here is this double aspect day where we have Mercury trining Saturn and then the Sun squaring Pluto. Okay? Previously, if you remember earlier, we had Mercury squaring Pluto at the same time that the Sun was trining Jupiter. So there was our double kind of experience there. But now we have a water trine with Mercury instead of an air trine with the Sun and Jupiter. Okay? So we may be having some conversations about how our energies merge with one another. This is Mercury in the second decan of Scorpio. How we have deeply enmeshed relationships that are very emotional, that are very distilling our energy with one another. It can be toxic, it can be beneficial. We just have to have the awareness to know when we are getting either too codependent or becoming too nostalgic about a past form that is losing its vitality. The Sun squaring Pluto, this is always an interesting one for our political leaders. So there may be some news that comes out revealing some corruption in the political sphere. But personally, this one can be about how we administrate our authority. Sun Pluto squares, oftentimes we want to be a leader and we're willing to do whatever it takes to be that leader. Now, keep in mind that the Sun is in its fall. It's in a place that is not comfortable for it. So sometimes we might see leaders falling from grace, and maybe this is a period of time where some corruption is revealed and a leader has a fall from grace. That could happen in our own lives. This is shining a spotlight on the systems that aren't working for us anymore and giving us the opportunity to make adjustments. That's what we're doing in Libra 3, these final degrees, making adjustments, and especially when it comes in contact with Pluto, making adjustments to the systems that support us. Okay, that gets us to Scorpio season. All right, so here we have Scorpio. Do me a huge favor. Let's take this next Decanic break to stretch it out. Please like the video. I'm going to take a little stretch here. Like and subscribe. If you're new here, sign up for my email list. If you want to know when I'm going live, turn on the notification bell. If you want to support the work that I'm doing here, there's a couple things that you can do. Of course, the aforementioned liking, subscribing, sharing it with your friends. If you want to make a donation to the work that I'm doing here today, you can buy me a super chat with the little $ in the chat, or you can buy me coffee at buymecoffee.com. You can also take advantage of the fall 2024 class offerings. That is a great way to support the work that I'm doing. And you get, hopefully, some wonderful community, some wonderful knowledge, some wonderful experience, some fun, a supportive environment. We get to connect. One of the things that I think people don't completely understand about the Decan Walk is that you're basically getting a personalized mini reading every 2 weeks, you know, or twice a month, I guess I will say. And that's pretty valuable to have kind of like your own personal astrologer throughout an entire year. I wish I had had that. So oftentimes we provide the things that we wish we had, and this is an opportunity to do so. So we're in the home stretch here. Let's get through Scorpio season, and then we'll wrap for the day. And then I'll go have some dinner and watch The Rings of Power. Episode 4? 5? Where are we at now? Tanya and I watched Agatha All Along last night, which is the first episode. Was a little slow starting, but we didn't get to the second one yet, but I'm excited about that. And then we're watching Rings of Power on Amazon Prime right now as Tolkien fans. All right, let's keep going. Pantero says, I'm not even on the new season yet. Oh, no. Get caught up, friend. Get caught up. Season 2 is good. I know that people have their opinions, especially with something as beloved as Tolkien, but I think they're doing a pretty nice job in Season 2. Some of the complaints that people had about Season 1, there's some changes that I think are really nice. But I just like being in Middle-earth, and I think it's a really awesome experience to see those themes come to life. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep rolling. Tom says, bummer, the Mountain Astrologer magazine is now defunct as of November 24th. Well, I think the magazine is defunct. I don't think that it's completely done, right? I think that it's still online. But yeah, print media has taken a real hit in this digital age. So definitely a wonderful publication. I have a few on my shelf. And but hopefully I think there's still going to be some of the digital version. But I could be wrong about that. But yeah, a great publication. I guess we'll just have to come over to Spencer Michaud Astrology every week and get your astrological fix. You do each week, Tom. You're an awesome supporter of the show. So thank you so much for being here. Don says, it's a super valuable deal, Spencer. Unfortunately, I spent a lot of money buying the Nichepso astrology software from Thema Mundi. Ooh, that sounds cool. Nichepso, one of the original astrologers that we are taking some interpretations from. I believe there was some lost writings of Nichepso. Well, Don, there will be other opportunities, but again, there's payment plans, there is a small sliding scale if you need a little bit of extra help. Send me an email. We'll figure something out. It'd be nice to work with you in whatever capacity. Maybe it's just the Hobbit. Maybe just one of the Decan Planet webinars. Who knows? There are price points for everyone. Deb says, I have to run, but thank you. This was informative today. Thank you, Deb. I hope you're doing well. Hang in there with everything, and hopefully we'll get to connect again soon. Deb was an awesome part of one of our guided group study book clubs recently, and had a lot of really awesome insights. So Deb, hang in there. Keep me up to date with things, and it's always nice to see you in the chat here. Tom says, yes, online only for the current issue. Yeah, I mean, that's some of the changes that we come in. And it's tough to lose the print part of things. I actually like the feeling of holding a physical book or magazine in my hand, so I can understand the mourning for the loss of that. Don says, yes, from Patrick Watson. I'm going to look at it and see what I can do. Nice, Don. Well, see what you can do, Okay, let's keep going. Let's talk about Scorpio 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring up the Decans of Scorpio webinar slide for Scorpio 1. You can find that at the store at spencermichaud.com if you want to get a full 2.5, 3 hours of Scorpio Decans. Here we see that 5 of Cups that we were discussing earlier. So we have the 3 spilled cups, someone mourning in a dark cloak with 2 cups behind them. This Decan is described as one of hunger, and the daimon, the nymphi, were objects of desire, and there were stories of them being chased by Orion and having some really difficult experiences with that hunter. I think that this Decan speaks of the difficulty of getting our desires met. I would also say that this is a Decan of grief, of mourning a desire that cannot be met, of also a realization of something that has to be let go of. I think that this is a very Mars-ruled decan. Mars severs and separates. So when we're going through this decan, there's often a realization that we have to let go of an object, of a person, of a relationship, of something we wanted that can't be fulfilled at this moment. And that's okay. That not every desire is meant to be fulfilled. Not every relationship is meant to last forever. So hunger, starvation, grieving losses, pursuit of instinctual desires, because it's Mars ruled. Mars being of the lunar sect can, bring up these deep feelings. Difficulty and fulfillment, disappointments and bitterness, fasting and asceticism. This is one of the ways that we can deal with this in the positive. Sometimes when we know that we need to let go of something, if we embrace it willingly, that can actually lead to some really positive outcomes. So questions to ask yourself with Scorpio 1. What do you desire? Is this pursuit healthy? What forms are decaying? What shadow is operating behind the scenes? That's that instinctual desire, right? How can you ritualize your grief? I talk about this a lot with clients that have positions here. How can we acknowledge what we're losing? How can we feel those feelings of catharsis so we're not getting stuck in the grief? There's a reason why we have things like funerals, so that we can let those feelings go and honor what is passing. So give yourself that. If you are losing something, ritualize that grief, and then how can you shift towards gratitude? How can you shift towards the perspective of the people, the things to be grateful for? One of the beautiful things about a funeral is connecting with the people that still remain and reforging those relationships. I think that with those 2 cups, if this person is having difficulty crossing over this river in the 5 of cups, if he would turn around to see what still remains, there is a path across the bridge to reach this castle of fulfillment, right? So through gratitude, through appreciating the people that still remain. Like that was one of the things when I lost my mom, I reconnected with some of my family that I didn't talk to a ton. And that was really powerful, and I just appreciated them. That's when I actually got super emotional, was on the phone with my dad afterwards, and just appreciating him, that he was there in my life, and I think that can be part of the Scorpio experience. Now, I do think that Scorpio, it definitely shows us, hey, this is decaying. This whole thing is not, you're not going to be able to keep this thing alive. Now, one of the things I've noticed about Scorpio placements, first of all, they're really great in a crisis. They're very stable in a crisis situation. Number 2, Scorpio energy is about defending the dying life force. I think that there can be this grip on life that Scorpio types or placements or seasons have, where we're like that scorpion is backed into a corner and it's facing its own impending death by like a hawk or something, and it's gonna like sting the shit out of you, right? It's not gonna go quietly into the night, and that is a scorpionic trait as well, is defending that which is dying with its last breath. And protection is important in Scorpio, and I see it very different than Aries Mars. Aries Mars is this brute force axe energy. Scorpio is like the ninja. It is going to be very efficient because its life force is at its end. It has to be efficient with the way that it does combat, if that makes sense. And it has to be very precise. It has to be like a surgeon's scalpel rather than the axe. And so if you do get into a conflict situation, you might need to be very strategic rather than just going out guns blazing. Lauren says, many physical things disappearing from the Taurian field via Uranus here. Many things returning. Recently was dropped an ephemeris from 1935. Ooh, that's cool. That's very neat. That's cool to find things that are old that need to be preserved. I always like that kind of thing. One of the things I'm so excited to explore are the emotions of the decans expressed through these cards in the walk. Ooh, yeah. Well, we'll have opportunities for that, Lauren. Like I said, we've had a really amazing group this past year that has been so gracious with sharing their journey, the ups and the downs of it. Like we don't skirt around difficult emotions in this group, and we've had some really tough things that we've had to work through. We've had some really amazing things too. We've had a lot of celebrations. We've had a lot of commiserating with one another. We've had a baby was born during the Decan walk. We had a new job. We had a parent pass. We had, oh man, we had a surgery. Like it's just someone moved completely. It was just amazing to see all these things happening in people's lives and how they were spoken to with the tarot cards and with the decans and through those languages. So yeah, I'm excited you're going to be joining us for that. Okay, so let's go back to the chart and let's take a look at what we're going to be going through for the last part of November. So we're going to start out this particular energetic place. So first of all, I want to point out that when the sun moves into Scorpio, Mars becomes its host, right? And the moon is going to be hitting Mars pretty much the day that it ingresses into Scorpio. So that is interesting to me, that it's a trine with that now. So now Mars is going to be trining the sun instead of squaring it. So I think a lot of it is maybe coming to terms with some of the challenges that we were going through rather than trying to gloss them over or try to beautify them, which sometimes Libra can be accused of, is trying to like put lipstick on a pig, right? You have to be very careful of that, where we're maybe you're trying to perform niceties when what we really need is a in-depth conversation that can get kind of ugly sometimes. And the ugliness is sometimes what's necessary to heal it. So, I want to point that out. And when we get to the 24th, we're going to start this out with a last quarter moon. So here is, let's go back to the degree of it. Here's the last quarter moon. Here's the moon in Leo, with Mars starting to apply, or Mars, actually the moon starting to separate from Mars, which is good. And we're getting closer and closer to our Mars-Pluto opposition, which is sort of the big elephant in the room. But with this particular square, this last quarter moon, we have the sun moving through the first decan of Scorpio, where I talked about the identification of that which needs to be released, the ritualized grief, maybe wanting to pull back a little bit because we're not feeling as vital as we were in the past, potentially. This is when we're starting to get more into hibernation mode. Now, the moon in Leo, the first decan of Leo is the pressure to perform, the pressure to put on a new persona, a mask, if you will, the first steps toward authenticity. Now, we have two placements that are fixed signs, which could be very stubborn in the negative, but also very true to what they believe in something else. So this is an opportunity to let go of pride, number one, to be able to have a rebirth or a catharsis. This is another opportunity where we might be feeling a little bit pressure to be visible in a space where we might be feeling grief, might be feeling down. And that could be a little bit challenging, where the last thing we want to do when we're feeling negative feelings is be visible, at least for me as a Leo rising. And when I'm feeling not at my best, I don't want to be public. But sometimes we're forced into those situations, and that there might be a circumstance like that where we're feeling that pressure. I would say also with the last quarter moon, it's an existential crisis. So feeling the tension between performing and, maybe hiding, it could be part of this as well. Again, we're going to have probably something that we are identifying that needs to be composted. And we have this energy of death and this peak sign energy of vitality with Leo. So the tension between life and death could be very prominent around this period as well. Now, as we go through that, we see the next day, the same day, the 24th, we have Mercury emerging as the evening star. So there it is. So this is interesting. We have the last quarter moon, But Mercury emerging as the evening star, this is the 15-degree standardized separation. I know that there's some disagreements about what that arc of separation is, but I'm following along with Demetra George's standardization of that in her Ancient Astrology and Theory and Practice. And this is where we're seeing Mercury becoming visible again as the evening star in Scorpio. So an understanding of the deeply enmeshed relationships that we have, like feeling, understanding maybe some habits that we have that could be toxic, that where we're influencing each other. Like one of the most difficult things to deal with is when you're trying to beat like an addiction and the people that you're surrounded by are feeding that addiction. This could be a moment where you're starting to understand those circuits of exchange and how you might be influencing someone in your life or being influenced by them, and whether that's healthy or not. And this could be a time to release something that you're realizing is not good for you. Okay. It also it's great for communication. Just pay attention to the messages that you're feeling, the messages you're receiving, and the messages you're feeling is not a bad way to describe it, because with Mercury and Scorpio, our thoughts and our feelings can really be overlapping. It's not necessarily the most subjective position. It is a very emotional way of thinking. Our thoughts can be clouded very strongly by our emotions when we have Mercury in water signs. All right, now we get to the 25th, and that's when Venus moves out of bounds. So here is Venus moving out of bounds right as it comes in contact with Antares at about 9 to 10 degrees of Sagittarius. So again, out of bounds planets are going outside the normal path of the sun in relationship to the ecliptic. That's what's called, I believe it's called astrological latitude. And that is how far above or below the ecliptic the sun goes over the course of a solar year. And when Venus or any other planet goes outside of that normal path, it's said to be out of bounds. And this is really fascinating to me. There is, with Venus out of bounds, I think there is potential for challenges, but I think it's a little bit less gnarly than when Mars went out of bounds. Mars out of bounds can be like violence that is out of the norm, like people going to extremes in conflict situations. Venus out of bounds can be going to extremes with our desires. It can also be creating art that is very unique. I seem to remember Bjork has a Venus out of bounds in her chart, and she's a very unique artist. She kind of, marches to the beat of her own drum, and that's sort of what we see with Venus out of bounds. We also have some negative Venus out of bounds examples. One I consider would be Drake. Drake has a Venus and Scorpio out of bounds, and he's had some pretty inappropriate relationships that society frowns upon, for good reason, because there was a huge age gap. Not to say that we can't have relationships that have a huge age gap, but in his case, it was an inappropriate age gap. And I think that we often see Venus out of bounds types of relationships being ones that are outside the norm. I mean, we think of like the movie Harold and Maude. I wonder if the director or writer of that movie had Venus out of bounds. That's an example of that. Capulets and Montagues and Capulets type of thing. That might have been a Venus out of bounds type of experience. Like to look at Shakespeare's chart or something like that. Just things where there wasn't a social acceptance of it. Rachel says, yes, I think Bjork has several other out of bounds planets too. Yeah, she's just a real interesting character. And she hasn't had the easiest life either. Like I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but she's had a lot of different challenging relationships within her life. She was a child star as well, so I'm sure that comes with all sorts of challenges, but definitely a very idiosyncratic muse out there, and I really love her music. And the way that, she just has a really unique stage presence as well. So Venus is going to be out of bounds starting from 9 or 10 degrees of Sagittarius all the way to 26 degrees Capricorn. And that goes back into bounds on December the 3rd. So that's quite a bit of time for Venus to be out of bounds. So you might find yourself being attracted to things that are outside of your normal attractions. I guess one other thing I would be careful of was like in relationships, like this could lead to some illicit attractions potentially. And because we're having that eclipse in the second decan of Libra, it's important to honor your commitments. So you might, if you are in a committed relationship and you have an agreement to be faithful to one person, be careful of, not stepping out on your agreement. Everyone has different agreements though, so just make sure that whatever agreement that you have, you're honoring that. There are lots of ways to have relationships, and I think that as long as there's communication, that can get you through the more challenging periods. This also might be an opportunity for you to, I don't know, purchase things or things that you desire that when Venus goes back in bounds, you're like, what was I thinking? That's weird. So it's like, why did I want this so bad? So just be careful about that. Desire is too, that desire nature can cause us to take action, especially in Sagittarius, without really thinking it through. There could be a real like, press the buy button, think about it later type of experience. And when you sober up, when Venus comes back in bounds in Capricorn, you might get a little bit of a rude awakening. So just be aware of that as well. Jennifer says, in my third Leo house perfection year, so Sun is going to Scorpio, hitting my Uranus in Leo. Okay, so you might get those the square. You might feel the square with the Moon and the Sun, particularly with that, I would say. Rachel says, my Venus is in a different sign, so perhaps not. Oh, it says, Rachel says, I missed one. It says, I have an out-of-bounds Venus too. Would this be considered an out-of-bounds Venus return? Yeah, maybe. In a different sign, it wouldn't be a Venus return. But sometimes I've found that when we have a planet in a similar phase that we have in our own charts, that people are sort of on our own wavelengths. Like I have Mercury retrograde in the chart, and I don't really experience as much of the negative parts of Mercury retrograde as others, because I feel like people are finally starting to communicate the way that I do, like very reflectively, like a lot of body language communication during that time, and a lot of really thinking about things before they speak during that period of time. And that's a lot of where I'm comfortable. So yeah, and with, like I said, Venus out of bounds isn't necessarily negative. Venus out of bounds, like with Bjork, can be an incredible artist, right? A pure expression of Venus that doesn't necessarily follow the social rules. But I'd be curious, Rachel, too, if like you've had relationships that have been outside the norm of society too, or outside your social milieu or things like that, but unique relationships potentially. Often it can manifest as a large age gap, or being in a relationship with someone who's very, very different from you. That can happen too. Rich says, agreed. I have Mercury retrogrades and generally enjoy those times too. Yeah, and just because we have Mercury retrograde in our chart doesn't mean that we avoid all the challenges of Mercury retrograde. There can still be technological challenges, etc. But I do feel like sometimes those are the times that I'm actually functioning well. I think mostly it's because everyone else is slowed down like we are. But I digress. Okay, so that's Venus out of bounds. Let's keep rolling. We're almost done. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I really appreciate just everyone being here today. Let's take a look over at the 28th. So here's October the 28th. We're getting closer to Halloween. And we have an active day with Mars trining Neptune. So here's Mars trining Neptune, retrograde. And we also have Venus squaring Saturn. So, yeah, let's redraw that. There's one. There's another. And let's make this one blue. What do you say? There's blue. So this is a set of aspects. We've got the square between Venus and Saturn. And then we have this trine. Logically, it would make sense if those colors would reverse, but I'm not going to nitpick here. So Mars trined Neptune, maybe taking action sacrifice. I think that there's a theme of taking action to sacrifice for the good of the family or the good of our kin, whatever that is. Could be our blood relatives or those that we consider family, especially with Neptune in the Decan associated with like almost like religious crusades and going to great lengths to achieve something that we deeply believe in. And part of this might be due to the challenges that we have with Venus and Saturn squaring off. So that now we have Venus and Saturn both in Jupiter ruled signs. We have Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. So this could be where we just are coming to terms with some of our limitations, especially because Venus in Sagittarius 2 is really glamorizing, glorifying the test of our mettle, the ability to unify body and spirit to come together for a unified purpose. Oftentimes we have to overcome a nemesis in the modern context, a foe to overcome, so that we learn how to assert our will. Now, when we hit smack into the brick wall of Saturn here, we might be wanting to overcome something to unify towards a goal, but we're coming face to face with a reality check. And this is a reality check of our beliefs, with it being Jupiter ruled, these Jupiter ruled signs. We might have our beliefs being split in a lot of different directions here. So be very careful about sacrificing for a cause, especially if it's out of alignment with your beliefs. You might be coming into terms with something where your beliefs aren't really matching up with what's being asked of you. And if you're having to make all these sacrifices, but it's not bringing you a sense of meaning, then it could potentially be an inefficient use of your time, resources, and spiritual energy. So a time where we might have to come to terms and slow down a little bit. I think that a Venus-Saturn square, especially a square from Saturn to Sagittarius, means movement might be a little bit more challenging, especially in relationships. We might have to just slow everything down, rethink our commitments a little bit, and figure out what we actually can do moving forward. All right. Jennifer's getting the Venus out of bounds, hitting your natal Mars. Oh my goodness. Be careful. Careful about buying things, Jennifer, with Venus out of bounds. A lot of times what I've learned about this this Mars year, I have Mars in the second house. I'm usually very, very frugal when I almost overthink every purchase. And with Mars activated, I have been less thinky about purchases, and I've kind of just like been a little bit more compulsive. I don't know if that's the right word. What is the word I'm looking for? I've just hit the button without thinking about it. And when you have a Venus out of bounds, that can also make it so that you're just taking action without thinking it through. So be careful about that. And there's always consequences to all these things. And finding the balance is important. All right, we've got a couple more things to get through here. And then we'll be wrapping up with an I-Ching and an animal today for you all. Okay? So, let's keep it rolling. Rolling, rawhide. Rawhide. So here we have our lead up to Halloween. So here's our last set of aspects here. And on the 30th, we have Mercury opposing Uranus. So here's Mercury and Uranus opposing, just like we had Venus opposing Uranus previously. So from a little bit of a different perspective, but possibly some similar themes, but with different topics and a different, this is where our thoughts, we could have a breakthrough with our thoughts potentially. We are also experiencing the trine with Mercury to Neptune on the 31st. So this is our like Halloween buildup. We've got this these shocks happening, shocking conversations, shocking communications. We may have some ability to create illusions Maybe you're just having a new costume and that you are wearing that you would never wear otherwise. Maybe you're creating a beautiful illusion. Maybe you're stepping outside your comfort zone with Venus out of bounds and having some really weird costume that you, at any other point you'd be like embarrassed to wear. I would also say be careful if you're taking, going out and celebrating and taking the kids out. Like it's important to follow all your safety precautions, especially with Mercury opposite Uranus and things like that. Check all your candy, whatever it is, if you do that. And this is sort of creating this kind of this grand trine with Mars here. Mercury, Neptune, and Mars. All right. Very watery. And very, very scorpionic, right? Very like glamorizing death. That's to me is the third decan of Scorpio, is this glorification of darkness. But this is a good time of year for that. I think Halloween can be very cathartic too. There are pagan ceremonial rituals. Samhain is around this period of time, and it is to honor the dead. It is to where the veil is thinnest, and we can communicate and honor what has come before and help with those transitions. So there's so many different ways to engage with this season. Death is so important to recognize and honor. We don't always like to acknowledge it in our Western civilization. We have this false attachment to unlimited growth, which I think is very, very toxic. And I think it's super important to honor these times that are about release, that are about returning things to the earth. And I think it's just a more mature way of dealing with life is by understanding death, we can appreciate life even more. But if we just think of things as exponential growth all the time, I mean, that's when we exhaust the soil. We're not returning energy and form to the soil to be able to bring us future growth, healthy growth, the growth that we create through constant pursuit of expansion is devoid of any nutrients, right? And it's debauchery. That's the name of this decan, the Lord of Debauchery. We commit more and more toxic, atrocious things to keep this illusion of endless growth alive. I was reading a new story today that was disturbing me about toxic waste from New York that was radioactive that people wanted to move to our local dump that is probably about 10 miles away from my house. And the people being very upset about that, rightfully so, because there's a school 500 feet away. And I think this is one of the things that's a lesson in understanding that there are always consequences. There are always consequences to trying to pursue expansion at any cost. And in our industrialized society, there is waste that's produced from over manufacturing things to be able to create cheap goods and to pursue profit. We're learning about this in the book I'm reading, Braiding Sweetgrass, with a group of people that talked a lot about the toxic waste dump that was a lake in around Syracuse, New York. The name of the lake is escaping me, but it starts with an O. And how do we restore those things? How do we understand that it's not just that nothing in this life is free, that there's always a cost, even if that cost is hidden. Now, thankfully, there was a court order to delay that radioactive material into our dump, but who knows what will happen moving forward. These actions we have real consequences, and being able to acknowledge those cycles is super important. And I think we're going to be understanding that through Scorpio season and hopefully honoring that which we need to release. Painted Turtle says, got into Day of the Dead through my daughter wanting to explore it. Very important to do in a healthy way. In what one sci-fi author called our present society a death denial culture. Yeah, absolutely. It is definitely that. And I think that we become spiritual adults when we acknowledge the fact that we are going to die and that death is an important part of this experience on this planet. and honor it as such. And that decay is important, that release is important, that consolidation is important, contraction is important. Everything is balanced when we acknowledge death. When we don't acknowledge it, we're out of whack, we're out of balance, and we're sick. It's a sickness. Death denial is a sickness, and we get more and more unhealthy the further we go in that direction. And I hope that that is something that we can acknowledge on this channel, in this community, because it's a really powerful realization, and it doesn't have to be negative. Acknowledging death can be joyful, and I think that this is something that we can learn through these rituals, and through understanding these things, is that when we release with joy, it really does seed the future, and it seeds a better future. Okay. All right. Well, that is what I have for you for the astrology of October. We are going to look at an I-Ching and an animal. So the I-Ching I got for you is interesting. The I-Ching I got was number 44, which translates to temptation, a brief encounter, coupling of opposites, two ships that pass in the night, hidden dangers, the beginnings of corruption. Now, this is about people coming together that aren't necessarily meant to be together permanently, and understanding that. So Jack Balkin has a paragraph and a much lengthier exploration that I'll highlight for you today. He says, you find yourself in a situation that seems outwardly pleasant and agreeable, but there are hidden dangers lurking behind an attractive facade. Sound familiar when we talked about denying some major problems with Mars and Cancer, but trying to gloss it over with Libra placements? Okay. This was really ringing some bells for me here. It says, troubles are brewing, although you don't yet realize it. It is possible that someone has a hidden agenda, or the people you are dealing with are simply not right for you. In any case, be exceedingly careful about offers and promises that people make to you. It is not yet clear whom to trust. Watch what people do and not what they say. Try to get additional information about their uprightness and trustworthiness. You don't want to put yourself in a compromising position. Okay? So this is understanding about not getting drawn into something that might not be right for you. Okay? There's a changing line that says, fasten it with a metal brake. Perseverance brings good fortune. If one has somewhere to go, one experiences misfortune. A raging pig is tied up. His hoof is damaged. So Jack goes on to say, a metal brake prevents strain and halts movement in the wrong direction. Tying up a raging pig with a damaged hoof prevents the animal from thrashing around in pain and making its injuries greater. This gives the foot a chance to heal. Both figures symbolize prophylactic measures taken at the outset that prevents greater problems from developing. An inferior element or a destructive tendency is beginning to enter the situation. You must take immediate steps to counteract it and prevent it from growing and becoming more powerful. Thus, the text says, it must be stopped with a metal brake. If you do nothing, the problem will not go away. It will merely loom larger. The same is true of yourself. Harmful emotions and bad habits may start small, but eventually become consuming. Nip destructive tendencies and negative thinking in the bud before they take over your life. I mean, really good advice from the transition from Libra to Scorpio. Another part of the Scorpionic experience is understanding negative attachments that we have, negative habits that we have, so that we can release them. Now that's going to change us to a very young, positive hexagram, number 1, which is called the dynamic, creativity, dynamic force, assertion, decisiveness, strong action, going forward, moving upward, undertaking something, constant and ceaseless exertion. So I think what I'm seeing with this is if we put limitations on our desires so that we can heal, if we let go of things that aren't serving us, if we are careful during Venus out of bounds so we don't overextend ourselves, then we will have power that we can utilize to direct in the direction of our choosing. So he goes on to say that this hexagram signifies that you are in a very favorable situation if you take the right approach. This is not the time to hold back. Rather, you must take strong, decisive action. Seize the initiative. Go out into the world and make a difference. Be creative. Look for fresh and original ways to solve your problems. It is time to try something new and bold. If you move forward now with confidence, others will have confidence in you. If you're willing to act in your beliefs and stand up for what you believe is right, people will look to you and will follow you. Your energy and enthusiasm will inspire them, and this will help you achieve your goals. So a really positive hexagram if we avoid the temptation of getting involved in something that may, or with someone that's not right for us. If we nip a problem in the bud, if we feel like we're getting into a circumstance or a bad habit, just eliminating it right away with our mental discipline, with our ability to identify it and release it, that can lead to a really great ability to move under our own power. Think about when you've let go of something that was toxic or unhealthy and how energized it made you. Like when you got rid of something that was toxic and sapping your energy. I feel like this is what we're going through here is when we eliminate a problem, that actually frees up energy to be directed in a healthy way. So this is something that I think that we might be working through here. All right. So the animal that I have for you, friends, is the flamingo. This is a new one. But it really does make sense. Flamingos are social birds. They live in flocks. This animal is encouraging us to be a little bit more social. Maybe to team up with others. Remember, we have an eclipse in Libra where we may be forced to team up with others. In my own life, I'm teaming up with my beautiful partner on those planet webinars, Dignity and Devotion. So emotional understanding, balance. These birds can be seen to be sleeping on one leg. They're literally balancing on one leg. Sometimes they think that that might help them conserve energy. It can also teach us that we can balance on small pillars. We don't necessarily have to have these huge pillars of support. We can, if we have the right balance, we can move through life with grace, with limited means sometimes. Flamingos also teach you about conservation of energy, okay, so that you don't overextend yourself. They eat by scooping up the mud and water, and sometimes has nutrients within it, and they siphon off the mud and they eat the nutrients. So this could be about siphoning through some of the things in your life to find the nutrition, to find the things that support you while discarding the muck, getting rid of the things that aren't serving you. So this also is a good opportunity and a good animal to teach us how to delegate. So it doesn't allow, because it is a flock animal, it isn't something that's like an individual hunter. Like if we had like an animal like a mountain lion, they are solitary hunters. So that one might talk about moving under your own power. But these animals help each other by being able to find food. And then when one individual finds it, the others are able to benefit from it. So work with others. Join a community that you feel some sort of energetic alignment with. Sign up for the Decan walk. No, just kidding. But no, sign up. It'll be fun. We'll go on a journey. But this could be an opportunity to be more social, to get involved in groups that will be supportive, to siphon through the muck and to find balance and be able to sometimes delegate some responsibilities so that you don't have to carry the weight of the world on your own. So that's what I've got for you today. We're coming in right under the 3-hour mark. That's awesome. Do me a huge favor, friends. Go over to SpencerMichaud.com. Check out the offerings. You can find the classes under the Book Now button. You can find previously recorded webinars in the store. Check them out. There's links to all of the different offerings here in the chat here as well. Go follow me over at Instagram and over on Threads and Twitter if you want to find out more things. I'm most active on Instagram at Spencer Michaud. Do me a huge favor. If you haven't yet, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, sign up for the newsletter if you want to know when new live streams are happening, new class offerings, new coupons. There's always some new offerings that are going on. Go support Tanya over at Third Coast Mojo. Make sure you take advantage of this Supermoon box set that she has here. You get 50% off of that if you sign up for the Planet webinars. If you want to support the work I'm doing, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com, or you can buy a super thanks or a super sticker here. And of course, please check out the offerings, Decan Walk 24-25, the Dignity and Devotion 7 Traditional Planet webinar series, and the guided group study, The Hobbit. That's what I've got for you today. Thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon or whenever you're listening to this. Leave me a comment, whether it's if you're listening after the fact. I would love to hear about your experience of some of these themes. I always love when people share their experiences. Do me a huge favor. Don't try to carry every single burden on your own this time around, this month. It's a great time to communicate with others. Express your feelings. Express your gratitude for the people in your life. Release those expectations where we make assumptions. If you're having a conflict with someone, just talk to them, just talk it out. There's always a solution. There's always a way to come into alignment and harmony with people. And I think it's through understanding them better and trying to see things through their eyes and through what they're going through. So take some time out of your day, your life, to really just understand where the people in your life are coming from, and that's going to help you to smooth things out with them. So that's what I've got for you. Remember to be kind. Be kind to yourself during these difficult transits. Be kind to others. Be kind to yourself through the nice transits. That's a great way to go through life. I know we're heading into election season and rhetoric can go off the wall, but it never hurts to be kind to people and to maintain your dignity and integrity even when it feels like there's chaos around you, right? Remember we talked about Libra III? Your inner peace brings peace to your communities and to your situations. So find that calm center within you, and you are going to be able to bring that to the spaces that you inhabit. All right, friends, that's what I've got for you today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all these wonderful comments. Thank you for all of your insights as well. And we will see you hopefully in class. And then we'll also see you next week for another live stream. So take care, friends. Peace.